Cory Booker, yes, Spartacus himself, sets a record for the filibuster on the Senate floor, previously held by Democrats who were protesting against the civil rights movement. Now, what was Cory Booker filibustering at the time when he was doing this? Well, if you check the legislative agenda, actually absolutely nothing. That's right, there was nothing on the agenda at that time, but we'll talk about this record-breaking filibuster, what it means, and where things go from here. In other news, Tariff Day is here, and the Dow Jones has been affected by it. We're going to talk about the tariffs that have been going on and going into place, some of the suggestions from Canada and Mexico about whether or not we should even have the tariffs anymore, so we'll talk a bit about that, what's going on there, and possibly some countries backing down right away as well. So we'll go over all of that and a whole lot more, talking about what's going on with this. Mike Lee has introduced a bill to abolish the TSA. We'll talk about some of the reactions to this, some of which are very Islamophobic, and let me tell you right off the bat, you would not expect them to be coming from the people who are making these. So we'll go over some of that, what's going on with that, and where we go. And at the bottom of the news part of the show, we will be talking about special elections that happened on Tuesday of this week. What happened there? What could be possibly coming out of this, and yes, some of the conspiracy theories that go along with this. It is going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary, so grab some coffee, find some friends, and yes, if you are watching on your morning commute, and no texting and driving, and we will see you on the other side of the title card. And you talk too much. You worry me to death. You talk too much, you even worry my pet. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. I love having technical difficulties at 8:30 in the morning, don't you? Just so you know, as of right now, the YouTube chat is not married to the rest of the main chat. I found that out when I was going through and checking everything that was live and everything else that went there. And yes, right now, Fanning is essentially talking to an empty room because, well, it's not going into the Twitch D-Live. Well, there's no Rumble chat, but the Twitch D-Live Kick chat that normally comes back and collates all back together. That's interesting. That's fun. Yeah, we'll have to figure out what's going on with that, but, I mean, for right now, we have news to go over here. There are over 70 tabs on my news browser today. 70. That's a bunch. We had a lot of stuff happen from Thursday of last week to Thursday now, so we're going to get into it fairly quickly. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out great programming from the Daily Ignoramus, or the weekly notice is what it's called now. He's going to be on later on today, so go and check that out. Go check out great programming from Overruled with KDZ. The Porch Boys are supposed to be coming back at some point in the near future. Still have evidence to see that. That is going to be a Rumble exclusive at this point, so probably for very, very good reason. That's what we have going on with that. I'm going to move this window here because if I keep the YouTube window up, I can put the Rumble up here and it scales down so I can see the chat there, and I can still see the D-Live, Twitch, and Kick chat. So anyway, yeah, go check out that great programming. It's going to be a great time. We got to get right down into it. So let's get started this morning on the news. Let's get my news screen up here. Let's see what we have to say. By the way, wonderful Celsius energy drink. This is not a paid promotion. If this was a paid promotion, this would be in their vessel and not in a drinking glass that I just got up out of my cabinet. So Celsius bucks, come on, roll in. I will drink out of your can on screen if you pay me. I'm a good little capitalist. So there's that, plus my morning coffee. I hope you have your morning coffee too. And we're going to get started today talking about tragedy, of course. This one may not be as much tragedy for me because, as everybody knows, I've only ever seen 5 movies in my life, and only one of those movies starred this man. Val Kilmer, film star who played Batman and Jim Morrison, dies at age 65. Oh, is it fixed? I see the restream chat now showing back up in YouTube. Did they fix it? Did they get this going again? Oh, we might be able to have conversations. Alright, let's talk about Val Kilmer. For reasons unknown. Oh, bot alert. This is from Bruce Weber over at the New York Times, a former newspaper. Hey, it's working again. Benny, you can stay right where you are. It's all working again. Alright, Val Kilmer, a homegrown Hollywood actor who tasted leading man stardom as Jim Morrison and Batman, but whose protean? It's not his protein gifts because, well, we don't talk about that on this show. This is a family show. An elusive personality also made him a high-profile supporting player. Died in Tuesday in LA. He was 65, so fairly young, actually. I think he's younger than my dad. The cause was pneumonia, said his daughter, Mercedes Kilmer. Mr. Kilmer was diagnosed with throat cancer in 2014, but later recovered, she said. Tall and handsome, in a rock star sort of way, Mr. Kilmer was in fact cast as a rocker a handful of times early in his career when he seemed destined for blockbuster success. He made his feature debut in the slapstick Cold War spy movie Top Secret. That one I've never even heard of. But it's as old as I am, 1984. In which he starred as a crowd-pleasing, hip-shaking American singer in Berlin, unwittingly involved in an East German plot to reunify the country. He gave a vividly stylized performance as Jim Morrison, the frontman of The Doors, and an emblem of psychedelic sensuality in Oliver Stone's The Doors. And he played the cameo role of mentor and advice-giving Elvis, as imagined by the film's anti-hero protagonist played by Christian Slater in True Romance. Never heard of. A violent drug chase caper written by Quentin Tarantino and directed by Tony Scott. Now, that actually sounds like something I'd be interested in. Never heard of it, but that sounds like something I would enjoy. Kilmer had top billing ahead of Sam Shepard in Thunderheart, never heard of, where he played an unseasoned FBI agent investigating murder in a South Dakota Indian reservation, and in The Saint, a thriller about a debonair, resourceful thief playing cat and mouse with a Russian mob. These all sound like movies that I would enjoy. How have I never seen any of these movies? Most famously, perhaps between Keaton and Clooney, he inhabited the title role in the Batsuit in Batman Forever, doing battle in Gotham City with Two-Face, Tommy Lee Jones, and the Riddler, Jim Carrey, though neither Mr. Kilmer nor the film were viewed as stellar representatives of the Batman franchise. I thought that one was actually better than Batman and Robin. I think everything was better than Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin was so bad it was more of a joke than an actual serious movie. And I think that Clooney actually played it as that. So, I'm going to save this article, actually. I'm going to put this in articles over in the Discord because, yeah, I'm going to come right off and say that every movie that was listed in here sounds like something that would be right up my alley. So, let's go back and add this one over to here. And our friend Jeep is just going to say that he's not going to click on that. Don't know. Anyway, so yes, Kilmer has passed away. F's in the chat for Val Kilmer. I am not interested in seeing a 12-hour movie about the Doors, but I am interested in seeing a lot of these crime thrillers that he did. So, F in the chat for that. Speaking of people who have passed away too soon, remember we talked last week about the U.S. soldiers that were gone missing in Lithuania, most likely related to a Humvee that they found in a peat bog that was half buried. Yeah, they found the fourth body, unfortunately. From NPC News, Marlene Lenthang and Moshe Gaines reporting fourth missing U.S. soldier found in Lithuania. The body of the fourth U.S. Army soldier who disappeared during a training exercise in Lithuania last week was found Tuesday afternoon, military officials announced. Staff Sergeant Troy S. Knutson Collins, a 28-year-old native of Battle Creek, Michigan, young guy too, unfortunately, was formally identified on Wednesday by the Army's 3rd Infantry Division. Knutson Collins was the last to be found after the bodies of 3 other soldiers were found on Monday. All 4 of the lost soldiers were permanently stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia. They had disappeared during a training exercise on March 25th when their M88A2 Hercules armored recovery vehicle submerged in the peat bog. The 63-ton armored vehicle was also removed from the peat bog early on Monday, I'm sorry. Wow, I read ahead, apparently, and it didn't work. Previously, the Army had identified the dead as Sergeant Jose Duenes Jr., 25 of Joliet, Illinois, Sergeant Edvin F. Franco, 25 of Glendale, California, and Private First Class Dante D. Titano, 21 of Dededo, Guam. Although we were relieved to have found all our dog-faced soldiers, it does not make the pain of the losses any less. Major General Christopher Norrie, 3rd Infantry Division Commanding General, said in a statement on Wednesday. I wonder if he is a good example of a modern Major General. I probably shouldn't use that joke while we're talking about the dead. That was probably in bad taste. We will continue to care for and support the soldiers' families and loved ones as we bring them home and honor their memory. The U.S. Army and Lithuanian authorities are investigating the cause of the accident. I'm not going to lie, the cause of the accident was a bunch of really, really young soldiers without the greatest of judgment, probably driving around and being stupid. But yes, they have found them. F's in the chat for their families. And over on the other side of the world, in Myanmar, survivors are still being found from Myanmar earthquake, but hopes begin to fade as deaths exceed 2,700. Some of you may still insist on noting this country as Burma, by the way. Same country. From David Rising. Rescue workers saved a 63-year-old woman from the rubble of a building in Myanmar's capital on Tuesday, but hope was fading on finding many more survivors of the violent earthquake that killed more than 2,700 people, compounding a humanitarian crisis caused by a civil war. Which is, by the way, why we're calling it Myanmar, just so you know. The fire department at Nepiata said the woman was successfully pulled from the rubble 91 hours after being buried. Praise God for that. That's a long time to be buried under rubble and still make it. Kind of reminds me of the Subaru commercials where they were talking about how safe they were, showing all the wrecks of these things on the back of the flatbed tow trucks, and somebody just standing out there. They lived. Experts say the likelihood of finding survivors drops dramatically after 72 hours. The head of Myanmar's military government, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, I hope I didn't butcher that surname that badly, told the forum for relief donations in Naypyidaw that 2,719 people have now been found dead, with 4,521 others injured and 441 missing. I do like that ratio of survived but injured versus deceased. That is a good ratio. These people are working hard and they're finding people before they pass away. Thank God. He said Friday's earthquake was the second most powerful in the country, recorded history, after magnitude 8 east of Mandalay in May of 1912. The casualty figures are widely expected to rise. The earthquake hit a wide swath of the country, leaving many areas without power, telephone, or cell connections, and damaging roads and bridges, making the full extent of the devastation hard to assess. Most of the reports so far have come from Mandalay, Myanmar's second largest city, which was near the epicenter of the earthquake, and Naypyidaw, the capital. The needs are massive. They're rising by the hour, said Julia Reese, UNICEF's deputy representative for Myanmar. Myanmar's fire department said 403 people have been rescued in Mandalay, and 259 bodies have been found so far. Again, with the more survivors than deceased, these are good numbers. I still feel bad for the deceased, but these are good numbers. It's always good when more people survive. In one incident, 50 Buddhist monks who were taking a religious exam in a monastery were killed when the building collapsed. And 150 more are thought to be buried inside the rubble. I'm talking about people dying, and people are over here talking about knitting. That's awesome. Way better viewers even right now at the top of the show than we ever got at 6 o'clock hour too, by the way. Oh, in Prison Fellowship, KX, by the way. I can remove the space and I can get cheap viewers. So, yeah, that was a pretty powerful one. I'm glad to see so many people survived. I'm sad for the people who have passed away. Survivors of Myanmar quake left without food and water and shelter, aid groups say. So we'll do. I'll run a quick Google search on the other window over here, and we'll bring it back over. But we'll look and see if there are any aid organizations that we can donate to right away. But let's read from Reuters first. Aid groups arriving in the worst hit areas of Myanmar said there was an urgent need for shelter, food, and water after last week's devastating quake. While in Bangkok, rescuers pressed on searching for life under the rubble of a collapsed skyscraper. More than 2,000 people died in the 7.7 magnitude quake, which hit around lunchtime on Friday. And as aid teams made into areas near the epicenter, it became clear to them that a massive humanitarian effort was required for those who survived. Having lived through the terror of the earthquake, people now fear aftershocks and are sleeping outside on roads or in open fields, an International Rescue Committee worker in Mandalay said. However, in towns and cities, safe spaces are scarce. There's an urgent need for tents. Even those whose homes remain intact are too afraid to sleep indoors, which is probably a valid concern. The IRC said its teams found people also urgently needed medical care, drinking water, and food. Civil war in Myanmar, where the junta seized power in a coup in 2021, has complicated efforts to reach those injured and made homeless by the Southeast Asian nation's biggest quake in a century. In Mandalay, a resident told Reuters that people were desperately trying to organize their own efforts to dig bodies out of rubble, as there was not enough equipment or rescue teams, and locals are wary of aftershocks. People went back inside the building in the daytime, but still not dare to sleep at night, the resident said. People are still sleeping outside and started getting sick as the ground has been hit by the sun the whole day and it's hot. State media has reported Myanmar's death toll at 2,065, with more than 3,900 injured and at least 270 missing. The military government declared a week-long mourning period on Monday. So, yes, even the people who came in and took over in a coup are still humanitarian enough to look over and say, yes, we mourn for those that we lost. So, you hate to see it. Especially, again, because these people have already been through so much. And one last one from CNN. Buildings in Myanmar continue to collapse days after deadly quake. From Rhea Mogul. Buildings in Myanmar are continuing to collapse 5 days after a powerful earthquake struck the country, creating perilous conditions for rescuers as they attempt to extricate survivors from the rubble. More than 2,700 people were killed in the 7.7 magnitude quake, with thousands more injured, according to Myanmar's military junta. Hundreds more remain missing, meaning the death toll is almost certain to rise. The Myanmar Fire Services on Wednesday shared a video of a heartwarming moment where the military's purpose-built capital, Naypyidaw, Dao, where workers pulled a man from the rubble more than 100 hours after the quake, a miraculous rescue that offered a rare moment of hope. So, it's still bad out there. Before we get too far, let's come over here. Grab this one. Aid. Charities for Myanmar. That's not how you spell that. So we'll get these up over here just on the Google search. Basically, I just searched for aid charities for Myanmar. We've got Give to Asia, International Rescue Committee, Charity Organization for Children, Help Children in Myanmar. That's from 5 days ago. So, Disaster Relief for Myanmar is Vanguard Charitable coming here. Fidelity. If you have investments through Fidelity, you probably already have an account with them. How to Help Myanmar, Thailand Earthquake. Let's grab that one open here. How to Help the Myanmar Thailand Earthquake. We've got Action Against Hunger, All Hands and Hearts, AVSI Foundation, CARE, C-A-R-E, Global Fund for Women. And they all have a link there. If there's anything that you want to throw at them, I'm sure even a $20 bill will help them out. Save the Children, Shelter Box, Project Hope. It's all right here. I will put this in the general chat in the Discord, even though that's been a mess for the last couple days. We'll talk about that on things I like and things that I hate. But I'll put that in the general chat tab, and if you guys want to give, I surely would appreciate that. And I'm sure that they would as well. All right, let's get down into the news. I just did that to see if you were paying attention. I saw something about Catmandu in the chat earlier. Let's go back and catch up. Catmandu is a Catman can. Gilbert and Sullivan is never in bad taste. I think it was in bad taste when I was talking about that while people were dying. I do. And dead. Heard you loud and clear through my headphones despite sitting right behind you. She's right behind me, isn't she? As I steal a joke from the Daily Ignoramus. Major Victory, he's right behind me, isn't he? Even though he was not in the same state at that time. All right, let's talk about the markets, because that is not looking good. Let me get a quick refresh on this, because they have opened and gone, and it's not good. The markets are down 1,398 points, which, by the way, means that stocks are on sale right now. This is not official financial advice, of course. This is a major reaction to the tariffs and, quote, Liberation Day we'll be talking about later on down the program. But let's grab one from, let's see if I can find one from our friends over at IBD, because they'll talk about the futures and what happened with that 2 hours ago. This one. From Investors Business Daily, Dow futures dive on huge Trump tariffs. Tesla, Apple, Nvidia, Taiwan Semiconductor, Palantir sell off. From Ed Carson. Get the monitor up here. I feel like this is a bit loud. I'll probably take that down just a little bit. That's better. Alright, let's get the Rumble chat back up here. Let's get the main chat back up here. Dow futures plunged early Thursday along with the S&P and the NASDAQ. They sold off as Trump unveiled reciprocal tariffs versus the world that were much higher than investors had feared. Yeah, because everything was climbing yesterday. And then, yeah, I can kind of understand where this is going. We'll talk a bit more about this on the tariffs, but as we finish with this article, I want to talk a bit about why the markets are dropping and what's happening with that. Because I kind of have a good idea of why. That came after the stock market whipsawed for solid gains on Wednesday's regular session. On the futures, Dow futures fell 2.8% versus the fair value. The S&P plunged 3.3%, and the NASDAQ 100 dove 3.7%. Crude oil skidded 6%, which means theoretically our gas is at least going to come back down. OPEC Plus agreed to a larger than expected May production increase, adding to crude's slide. The 10-year yield tumbled to 4.07%. The U.S. dollar plunged. The Challenger job cut report reported that 275,240 planned layoffs were announced in March, up 60% from the 172,017 in February, the highest since May of 2020. Federal job cuts related to Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency dominated. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. This could be especially true in this instance. Trump's tariffs are bigger than feared. Trump announced a 10% baseline on all imports worldwide, but many key trading partners will face much higher duties though Trump claimed they don't fully cover what other countries impose in the U.S. via tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers. The U.S. will charge a 34% tariff rate on importers of Chinese goods. That comes to 54%, including on iPhones, following two 10% tariff hikes by Trump earlier this year. Taiwan, home to Taiwan Semiconductor, will face a 32% tariff, Trump imposing a 20% tariff on imports from the European Union, 24% on Japan imports, and 46% on Vietnamese goods. Now, I want to talk a bit about this right now, but we're gonna go more in depth onto this later on down the stack when we talk about Liberation Day and the more focused articles on the tariffs. But that is what's driving the markets right now. And a part of the problem with this is the fact that, and even when I was talking about this back in 2012, 2013, 2014, realizing, and those were the years when I started looking and seeing the kinds of tariffs that are actually imposed on us around the world. And there's a lot. There are a bunch of tariffs around the world that are put on U.S. goods to protect their countries and their internal industries and keeping our product out of their markets. Also making it more lucrative because we don't have a reciprocal for us to ship a job to Turkey, to Burma, to Thailand, to Taiwan. Hell, even to Ireland. it's more business friendly to go have the Irish make the goods over in Ireland and then ship it over here. While Ireland themselves, through the Europe, well, I guess Ireland's not in the European Union anymore, but Ireland does have a pretty stiff tariff on a large swath of U.S. goods. And even back then, I understood the idea that, yes, we do need to do something about this to at least level the playing field. And back then I said I would go back and impose the duty, country by country, exactly what they impose on us, by product even going down specifically to that, like 200% tariff on Canadian milk, for example. And if these countries want to continue trading with our country, then at the rate that they were before, then they have to go back and bring the tariffs that they have down. That's the deal. I will match them tariff drop for tariff drop. But also understanding the fact that with most of our jobs having been sent over to Turkey or to Burma, for example, or Thailand or India, or places like that, is the fact that these factories are shuttered and the equipment that is in them, if there's still equipment in them, is old and outdated. So where the investors are getting spooked on this is, yes, now there is an incentive for business people who already have business to come back and bring their factories over here, but that is going to take time. Because we don't have the production, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have we have the buildings, but we don't have the equipment in the buildings, we don't have the people trained to make the stuff over here. And yes, it's going to hurt. I understand that, and I accept that. So that is what we have off that. All right, let's get into more news. Big news. We've done the bad stuff. We've done the finance. Good news on the finance front for you. From CNN, egg prices are falling, but there's a catch. It's CNN, so of course there's a catch. From Vanessa Yurkovich over at CNN, the egg shortage may have finally been cracked. The price of wholesale eggs fell again last week to $3 a dozen. The U.S. Department of Agriculture reported their weekly egg market report. That's a 9% decline from the week before. The supply situation at grocery outlets has greatly improved in recent weeks, and consumers are once again seeing fully stocked shelves and enjoying a range of choices without the purchase restrictions the report detailed. This should be welcome news for consumers. Egg shortages and higher prices have plagued them for months. In February, the price of a dozen eggs hit a 10-year high, retailing for $5.90 according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The egg market seems to be on the upswing. While the avian flu has killed more than 30 million egg-laying birds this year, the outbreaks have been contained. Bernd Nelson, an economist at the American Farm Bureau Federation, says the price drop is largely due to a sharp decrease in cases of avian flu, with just 2.1 million birds affected in March this year compared to 23 million in January and nearly 13 million in February. America's poultry farmers have put the work to tighten biosecurity, and they'll continue to strive to protect their flocks. Demand has also fallen as consumers got tired of paying higher prices, giving suppliers the chance to build back supply. Lower prices have followed. I think the story is over on eggs right now. We've got plenty of eggs coming in, said Stu Leonard, owner of the Stu Leonard's grocery store chain in the Northeast. Leonard says he was willing to selling eggs for $10 a dozen in December, but today eggs are retailing in his stores for $5.99, and that's still outrageous, by the way. But for Boston standards, and I don't know where Stu Leonard's is, but cost of living in Boston standards, that's actually probably right on target. Quick Trip is $3.99 if you are in the Wisconsin, Minnesota, and now into the Illinois area, also Iowa. $3.99 for eggs. Pom and I bought 3 dozen almost immediately. Once we finish up this mess of news stack, I'm going to go eat some. Arvold is here. I'm here this morning. Please start over. Okay, hang on. Let's start over. morning, welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. Okay, we started over. Alright, back to what we were doing. But despite the bright spots, it can take weeks for wholesale prices to translate to most grocery store shelves, according to the USDA. Well, I don't know about that because, like I said, Quick Trip is already at $3.99. I would not be surprised within the year to see 99-cent eggs. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but it also wouldn't entirely surprise me. Only now starting to see shelf prices slowly decline. The Department of Agriculture's report said demand from egg products manufacturers is mostly light, as many have been able to take advantage of sluggish carton market to build supplies on the spot market, enough to increase production levels to a 3-month high. So CNN is going to find the downside, but I think a big part of that too is we also knew, especially out in the country, where to go find more eggs. Alright, we got to keep going. Hey look, there's the behind the scenes look for you guys. Alright, since it was April Fool's, the joke came out, and this was a joke post. I thought it was real for a moment. From NPC News, sell the agorist. With the picture that's been widely circulated, Trump signs executive order to end the 1934 National Firearms Act. I really wanted this to be true. But in the bottom it says, April 1st, 2025, President Trump signs the EO to dismantle the 1934 National Firearms Act in front of his staff. This, of course, is not true because today is April Fool's Day. Gotcha. Blink. So, yes, it was an April Fool's joke. Funny one, though. I bought it. Alright. Now that we're down past that, we're going to do a little bit of Signalgate, which, by the way, has thankfully fallen for the most part off of the radar because it was nothing. And really, honestly, I think everybody knows that it was nothing. It's like the immigration story that I thought about putting on the stack, and then I started counting tabs, and I said, no, we're not going to put that on here right now. Same author, same company, same publication, same everything. And now we're suddenly talking about an innocent father from Maryland that's never done anything wrong is being deported down to El Salvador. Well, no, there was a lot more going on with that visa. And that guy's being in the country than just he's an innocent father. It was a good tearjerker, I'll give you that, but it was also highly inaccurate. From Politico, Waltz's team set up at least 20 Signal group chats for crises across the world. From Dasha Burns, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz's team regularly set up chats and Signal to coordinate official work on issues including Ukraine, China, Gaza, Middle East, policy, Africa, and Europe, according to 4 people who have been personally added to Signal chats. I mean, if you want to organize it that way, just make one single big channel, server for this on Discord, and then just put your individual channels for it. Discord is totally safe and secure, right? It'll only be 1 or 2 thought bots that show up in there. Right? Right? 2 of the people said that they were in or have direct knowledge of at least 20 such chats. All 4 said they saw instances of sensitive information being discussed. But they're completely anonymous, so they might actually have top secret clearance. They might be people who are in the cabinet. We don't know. 2 of the people said they were in or have direct knowledge of at least 20 such chats. Also, it's a more extensive use of the app than previously reported and sheds new light on how commonly the Trump admin's national security team relies on Signal, a publicly available messaging app to conduct its work. I want to get Signal. Who wants my Signal? I'm going to get Signal. I'm going to do it. Hey, maybe I'll get added to one of these chats. Arvel says, I saw secure information. Trust me, bro. It was commonplace to stand up chats on any given national security topic, said one of the people involved in the chats, adding that the groups often included cabinet members and high-level staff. I don't know, the chat that I saw from the Jeffrey dude, that was, that seemed to be all the staffers discussing stuff. All four of the people were granted anonymity because once we find out that they're just the janitors, then we're not going to buy this story. Because they were not authorized to publicly discuss the private chats. That means it was the janitor. The janitor did it. So, this for me is full out grain of salt mode. From NPC News, J.D. Vance's role in Signal Chat angers senior Republican lawmakers. Some think Vance tried to block an order from Trump, others feel he is on the wrong side of the rift between MAGA and the GOP internationalists. Well, I want to be on the wrong side of that rift because the GOP internationalists want us to be in war more than Joe Biden does. From Gordon Lobold and Courtney Kube. Vice President Vance's last-minute concerns about Trump's decision to strike the Houthis in Yemen raised in a now public Signal chat with other top U.S. officials have left senior Republican lawmakers angry. Ask me how much I care what senior Republican lawmakers think. Reminder to everybody, some of you who might be new at this point, given the fact that we have a nice new audience that wasn't here for the 6 o'clock hour, is I am not a Republican. I have never been. I guess I flirted with it briefly when I was younger, but I am not a Republican. I'm not a libertarian because I think those people are cringe. Ideologically, I probably align more with them, but I am first anti-war, which is why I like to mock the Republican internationalists, of course. More free trade. I do have a room in my life for tariffs, but it's not a huge thing for me. So I'm a bit all over the place, politically. Anyway, going back to this. Also, let me get the live chat back up here because I switched some things around. Where's my Rumble? There's my Rumble. Some are upset because they think Vance was trying to block a directive from Trump. Others, reflecting a broader debate inside the admin and the GOP over the wisdom of embarking on a stepped-up campaign against the militant group, are upset about the side that he took. Trump has campaigned and governed on the idea that America should be put first and its traditional allies and conflicts overseas second, but his admin is now making moves that reflect the potential for a protracted military campaign against the Houthis. And just to look at this without having all the information that's publicly available in Signal, I will point out to the fact that I think what he's doing with the Houthis, and I don't agree with it, but is on the America First side based on the fact that what they're harassing is a shipping lane that jams up supply chains. So trying to keep the supply chains open so that Americans can continue to get their cheap, crappy goods from places like Burma and China and Thailand. Whether or not that's actually the case, I don't know, but that seems to be, at least from a layman's point of view, where this is going. The Pentagon has moved an additional aircraft carrier and its attendant ships into the region, joining the USS Harry Truman carrier strike group already there. Pete Hegseth has authorized at least 2 Patriot missile defense batteries from Asia to be moved to the Middle East. 2 U.S. officials and 1 defense official told NBC News. And in a move that suggests the thoughts of a sustained campaign in the Middle East, NBC News has also learned from one U.S. official and another person familiar with the matter that defense officials have approved the relocation of a large missile system known as the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, a more complex effort. At the same time, the military has acknowledged in a statement that it quietly moved multiple B-2s, C-17s, and KC-135 refueling tankers to Diego Garcia, a tiny island in the Indian Ocean that's been used as a hub for operations in the Middle East. In the past, the B-2 bombers can carry the largest bombs in the U.S. arsenal, including bunker buster bombs that can be useful against Houthi militants who are known to bury sites deep into the ground to protect them. So, yeah, there is definitely a rift. And I think that Vance is right to questions. I do. Because, again, we first must be anti-war before we do anything else. And I think that this has been going on in private, even back in the Pence days. But having the Signal chat pop out made it much more public. As far as the White House on this, we're going to take a page from our friends over at NPR. The White House says it is case closed on the Signal group chat review. And remember, NPR is only 10% government funded, and the ad revenue for people like me who keep the ad blocker up is negligible. So you have to hit that donate button because NPR needs our money, comrade, to continue to tell us that when Democrats want war and Republicans don't want it, that war is good. So we must make sure that we get the right position on the Houthis based on Orange Man Bad. NPR is never printing reality. National Progressive Radio. Let's see what it is that they have to say. The White House has concluded its review on how the Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg was inadvertently included on a Signal messaging group chat of high-ranking officials discussing impending strikes in Yemen. After the fact, of course. The Atlantic story, published a week ago, stunned Washington. Not really. It seemed to be business as usual the whole time. Because of the sensitive nature of the information disclosed on the app, the White House has said none of the information was classified. This case has been closed by the White House, as far as we are concerned. Press Secretary Bubbleheaded Bleach Blonde told reporters on Monday. There have been steps made to ensure that something like that can obviously never happen again, and we are moving forward, she said. Someone got fired. I know somebody got fired. Leavitt did not offer details about what steps the White House is taking after its review last week. She had told reporters that the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office, and Trump advisor Elon Musk were all looking into how the mishap happened. I bet you I could figure it out. Although if I figured it out, it would be labeled a dangerous conspiracy theory. Alright, one last one, saying, oh, if it was me, I would totally have stopped this whole thing. No, that's actually what the article is. From the Hill, Trump nominee says he would have stopped a signal breach from Ellen Mitchell. Retired Lieutenant General Dan Raisin Kane. His name is Raisin Kane. That's got to be a Southern thing. Arvold, weigh in, please. The nominee for chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff largely sidestepped questions from the Senate Armed Services Committee, Democrats, about his views on the Signal chat controversy. But he did allow that officials should always protect the element of surprise, a nod towards concerns that Trump officials breached security protocols in the scandal. Under questioning from several panel Democrats, Kane repeatedly asked how he would have responded to the leak, which happened after National Security Advisor Michael Waltz accidentally invited a journalist to a Signal group chat, which I don't believe that is the case either. I'm pretty sure that that was a staffer that did that, and deliberate or accidental, we'll probably never know. Pete Hegseth then shared non-sensitive information with a group about the upcoming U.S. airstrikes about the Houthi militants in Yemen. I know the Hill can lie, but I can't. I thought the B-2s were based out of Missouri. Could have been. Where are the B-52s based out of, by the way? Should we go look that up? With 70 tabs sitting up on the screen? Knowing what you do about the substance of that conversation, how would you feel? Said Blumenthal of Connecticut. Kane replied, we can all agree that we need to always protect the element of surprise, later saying, that's a key and essential thing that we owe our warfighters. And when Gillibrand asked what Kane would do, by the way, they're prepping her for a White House run again, just so you know. Arvold says the B-52s are based out of the Love Shack. Love it. Although that's not my favorite song of theirs. Was Rome theirs, or was that... No, that was theirs. I like that one. That was a good one. Gillibrand asked what Kane would do if he saw classified information, war plans, or tactical information on an unclassified chain of communications. He said that he would weigh in and stop it if I was a part of it. Kane's hearing comes after Trump blindsided the Pentagon in February by firing 7 top officials, including then Joint Chiefs Chairman Air Force General C.Q. Brown. Critics of the move worry that in nominating Kane, whom Trump has extolled as a loyalist, the president was seeking to fill top defense leadership positions with those who wouldn't dissent from his opinions, slanting his historically apolitical U.S. military in his favor. Yeah, I still think that would be a good thing to have, somebody who isn't going to question what you're doing, while the rest of the world is trying to put us into a war. So, there's that. Now, a bit of a pushback onto this one, and I think this is the last thing that I have on Signalgate. Yes, it is, because then we go back and talk about tariffs. You're not seeing Arvolt over there. I can see him on my YouTube, because he's showing the D-Live over there. Huh, I wonder why you can't see him, because I can, because I have the YouTube chat up here. So just a bit of a talk on where I think that this was astroturfed beyond reality at this point. The redheaded libertarian, TRHL official, points out Pete Hegseth was the hardest cabinet member to pass. The first scandal immediately involves him. There were calls to have him alone step down within hours of the scandal, despite others being involved, and despite at the time there being no proof of the scandal. In hindsight, yes, we have proof of it, but at the time that people were calling for him to step down, we hadn't seen the messages. It's 4 steps to add someone to a Signal chat. This does feel like a targeted frame job. Let's see. Michael Waltz had added you to the group. Was circled in this. Signal is encrypted. This is how the governments frequently communicate. Mike Waltz added Goldberg to the chat. Goldberg published the chat. Better fire Hegseth about it. Well, he shared the information in the chat, don't you know? Even though, again, as pointed out, this is a regular thing for governments. Like I said, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna get Signal. I don't know anybody else that has it, but I'm gonna get it, just for the hell of it. All right, let's talk about Liberation Day with a video to start. U.S. and the rest of the world prepare for Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. Might have to refresh this one. Alright, video's loading. Let's watch for a little bit.
major announcement on tariffs from President Trump to be delivered from the White House this afternoon. Now, Mr. Trump is calling this Liberation Day, claiming levies could bring in trillions of dollars in revenue. But economists at the Yale Budget Lab estimate a much lower number. Data shows it could take up to a decade to generate more than $1 trillion in tariff revenue from Canada, Mexico, and China, which is about $150 billion annually, you see there. And experts say revenue from auto tariffs could total about $60 to $65 billion annually. And all of this, the White House says, will reduce the national debt.
The lack of reciprocity contributes to our large and persistent annual trade deficit that's gutted our industries and hollowed out key workforces. But those days of America, beginning tomorrow, being ripped off are over. American workers and businesses will be put first under President Trump, just as he promised on the campaign trail.
So here we go. We've got team coverage of this major announcement for you. Remy Inocencio has the international impact already being felt. He will join us from London, but let's begin with Natalie Brand at the White House. Good morning to you, Natalie. So what are the plans for President Trump's announcement? How soon might we know the specifics?
Yeah, Errol, later this afternoon, and good morning to you. The president's set to announce this highly anticipated tariff package later this afternoon around 4 p.m. in the Rose Garden. That location signifies the importance of this event to the White House. And CBS News has learned that he is expected to be joined in the audience by steel workers and auto workers. Those are two industries the administration has argued will be helped by the administration's tariff policy. We are also expecting top GOP lawmakers in the audience. But the details of what exactly these reciprocal tariffs could look like still unknown this morning. The White House has tried to keep this a big surprise. The press secretary has repeatedly said she's not going to get ahead of the president's announcement, but they are expected to take effect immediately. We also don't know, which countries will be impacted and how. The president has said he's looking at all countries. We've looked up some U.S. government data regarding top trade deficits. And if you look at those countries, they include China, the European Union, Mexico, Switzerland, Vietnam, and also Canada in the top 7 there. And Errol, I also want to mention these new tariffs on top of what's been previously announced regarding a 25% tariff on foreign vehicles and auto parts set to take effect tomorrow.
So when you look at the big picture, Natalie, this is...
So, and with that, and now that we know a bit of what got announced off of this is, like I said when we were talking about the finance, this is going to suck for a while. It really is. And there are no two ways around saying the fact that this is going to suck for a while. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the equipment in the buildings. We don't have the people trained anymore, especially on some of the systems. Let's use cars for an example. Some of the new systems that are going into cars, that the transmission has always been made in Mexico for as long as that transmission has existed. We don't have the tooling, we don't have the training for people to go back and put that together on the Ford factory line in Dearborn, for example. The trade-off to that, though, is the fact that necessity it's the mother of invention. If you want people to come back out and bring the industry, bring the buildings back up, you have to give them an incentive to do so. And I hate to say it, but it means that it's got to suck for a while. It depends on what you want and when you want it. I'd like to see a lot of these jobs go back and return with the full understanding that, yes, it's going to suck in the meantime. A person on a lower economic rung than me may not look at it that way and say, if it sucks, it's going to suck forever, and this sucks more than anything's ever sucked before. So perspective does matter into a bit of this one here. I'm not a factory worker. I'm comfortable in the idea that my job is going to be there no matter what happens with any of this. But we will see where that goes. Maybe you have Restream bot blocked by accident. That could be. Alright, now we have the live updates, of course, the live updater. Trump to roll out sweeping new tariffs. I'm going to skip this because I hate the live updaters. Moving on to Fox News then, because I hate the live updaters. These are the dirty 15 countries Trump might target with Liberation Day tariffs. This is, again, is previous to the announcement. From Diana Stancy. Where's my music? Why don't I have music? There we go. From Diana Stancy. Huh! Look at that, it's blocked. I wonder if we can go back and archive that one right away. If it was previously archived. Let's test this out. This page was last archived 19 hours ago. Archive.today for the win, by the way. Might have to do that later on in the stream as well. These are the dirty 15 countries Trump might target with Liberation Day tariffs. President Trump is poised to unveil a massive series of reciprocal tariffs Wednesday, where he will likely impose duties on multiple countries as part of what the administration has labeled as Liberation Day. Trump and his admin have long decreed that other countries are engaging in unfair trade practices against the U.S. and have advocated for employing tariffs to rectify the nation's $1.2 trillion trade deficit. I hate the way that Shapiro explains a trade deficit, by the way. That is one of the most annoying things in new media at this point. Okay, gang, here's the deal. Okay, if you go to the store and you buy, they have the product that you want and you have the money, you have a trade deficit with that store, okay? It's that simple. And what they're doing with tariffs is stupid, and we should just let other countries go ahead and charge us duties and everything and continue to buy from them, because that is the way that the world works. Okay, gang? You have a trade deficit with the store is the stupidest explanation that I've ever heard from any of this. Despite previewing his massive round of tariffs forthcoming Wednesday, the White House has remained reticent regarding the specifics of the potential tariffs and which country it plans to target. Even so, speculation has emerged about a list of countries known as the Dirty 15 that might face new duties. The term Dirty 15 stems from an interview Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent conducted March 18th with Fox Business, where he referenced 15% of countries that make up the largest trade deficits with the U.S. However, Bessent didn't cite specific countries. Even so, the Trump admin has given some clues and has pointed to specific countries in certain official documents. For example, countries that were singled out in a notice the Office of the U.S. Trade Representatives posted in March for review of unfair trade practices included Argentina, don't cry for me, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, and the EU. India, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Switzerland, Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, and the UK and Vietnam. Additionally, the 2024 Commerce Department trade deficit reported cited the following countries as those with the highest trading deficit with the U.S. China, EU, Mexico, Vietnam, Ireland, Germany, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Canada, India, Thailand, Italy, Switzerland, Malaysia, and Indonesia. The Treasury Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment from Fox News Digital. The White House did not respond to a request for comment from Fox News Digital requesting specifics on which country would face new tariffs and which were on the Dirty 15 list. Apparently, and this is the way that the left-wing mainstream media is explaining this to us, I can probably quickly and more entertainingly explain which countries are going to be facing the tariffs. Wait, no, I don't want to use Chrome. Where's my Brave tab? I want to do this off screen so you guys don't see what it is that I'm doing. There we go.
And now, the nations of the world, brought to you by Yakko Warner.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Republic Dominican, Cuba, Caribbean, Greenland, El Salvador too, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Guyana, and still Guatemala, Bolivia, then Argentina, and Ecuador, Chile, Brazil, Costa Rica, Belize, Nicaragua, Bermuda.
That's a good sampling of who's going to be faced by the tariffs, apparently. If we take what CNN says at face value. Trump has signaled that tariffs would go beyond just 15 countries. He suggested that to reporters on Air Force One Sunday that tariffs wouldn't just affect 15 countries, claiming you'd start with all the countries. All of them. They're all the worst. We're the best. They're all the worst. White House Press Secretary Bubbleheaded Bleach Blonde told reporters Tuesday Trump was conducting meetings with his trade team that day, and tariffs would take effect immediately following the Wednesday Rose Garden ceremony. So they're speculating, and it wound up being everything. Another one from our friends over at NPR, and remember again to hit that donate button because you see no ads over here. Today is Liberation Day. What does that mean for tariffs? From Danielle Kurtzleben. Let's see what they have to say. Oh, we got an advertisement right away. On Wednesday, Trump is set to unveil what he's been calling reciprocal tariffs, taxes on imported goods from a broad range of countries aimed at penalizing them for their trade barriers. I've never ever heard a good explanation as to why it's okay for them to have major tariffs on us, but not the other way around. When I had the song up, Arvold said, "Hey, that's all the people we give federal funding to also." Let's see. Let's just look at a couple things with this. Looks like we're trying to fix a blocked Restream bot over here. You might have top messages down. I don't rate that high when I'm on DLive. Let's see. Arvold's office has DLive blocked. Also possible YouTube doesn't like me. Arvold says left-wingers have no ability to delay gratification. Also says long-term tariffs are good for us. Which, yes, and that I do see, because, again, the incentive is to make it here, but it's going to suck for a while. It is. Quest says that's a key. Reciprocal. Trade deficits aren't inherently unfair. If your stuff sucks, nobody should buy it. And then, yes, we are going to oh, hey, the Restream bot is fixed. Haha. Alright, anyway, we gotta keep going. It's a push he's been branding as Liberation Day, promising it will bring in foreign tariff revenues to put towards U.S. tax cuts and deficit reduction and spur a renaissance in U.S. manufacturing. But the pledge has glossed over the pain expected to be felt by U.S. consumers, whose economists expect will end up paying higher prices, and by U.S. farmers and exporters targeted for retaliation by other countries. Polaris. I think that was autocorrect. Some U.S. manufacturers will be hurt by higher costs for imported materials, and mainstream economists are skeptical that tariffs will bring in as much revenue as Trump has promised. While details on this plan are sketchy, the Yale Budget Lab estimated the scheme could cost the average American consumer $2,700 to $3,400 a year. The uncertainty over the policy has roiled the economy. The S&P closed out its worst quarter since 22. The consumer confidence recently hit a 12-year low. Trump had vowed the tariffs will mirror what other countries impose on U.S. goods, but lately he's appeared to moderate his tone. They took advantage of us, and we're going to be very nice by comparison to what they were. The numbers will be lower than what they've been charging us, and in some cases, maybe substantially Lower. Trump's policy has been unique not only in his aggressive rhetoric around tariffs, but also in the vagueness and unpredictability surrounding his policy announcements. Thus far, he's imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum, Chinese goods, some goods from Mexico and Canada, which is why your avocados from Mexico are so much more expensive. Avocados from Mexico. But he's also threatened, delayed, or withdrawn tariffs on an array of other goods, often telegraphing new potential moves while providing few to no details. The reciprocal tariffs are another example of this pattern. A February 13th memo laid out at the start of the process, instructing cabinet members and advisors to study how non-reciprocal trade relationships might be harming the U.S. economy, then submit reports that propose ways to make trade with any given country reciprocal. At the same time, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said those studies would be done by April 1st. We will hand the president the opportunity to start on April 2nd if he wants, Lutnick said. This still leaves flexibility in the timing of imposing the tariffs. While it's not clear when specific tariffs will come into effect, the White House press secretary, bubble-headed bleach blonde, said on Tuesday that they would be imposed immediately. So, again, this was a pre-announcement. Some response to this, Senate Democrats force vote to block Canada tariffs as Trump puts pressure on the GOP, which, by the way, they passed, with 4 Republicans going and joining on the Democrat side to pass this. Those 4 being Rand Paul, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and, I can't think of the other lady's name right now. The Maine woman, the Alaska woman, Rand Paul. I can't think of the other one. It's on the tip of my tongue. Let's find out live. I can see her face. Let's find this over here. Oh, McConnell. That's the one. I thought it was the other lady. Now I'm curious as to which one of the other lady I was thinking of. McConnell makes sense, though. Anyway, the Senate's expected to vote on Wednesday, and they did on a measure aimed at blocking tariffs on Canadian products that are set to take effect as Democrats seek support from a handful of Republicans willing to buck President Trump. The resolution, led by Tim Kaine, would terminate the national emergency that the president is using to impose the tariffs, effectively blocking the sweeping levies on foreign imports. It'd also be the first time that we actually ended a national emergency in the last 70 years. Kaine is forcing the vote under the National Emergencies Act, but the GOP-controlled House is unlikely to take up the resolution, making the vote largely a symbolic one. Yeah, that's the other side of that. I know somebody, when I put it in the Discord, said it was going to get vetoed. I'm like, it's not going to make it that far. There's still a lot of discussions underway and a lot of votes that are still in play. Kaine said at a news conference on Tuesday, often in the Senate, everything is pretty predictable. This is one where it's not particularly predictable. And I know, like, with McConnell and Collins and Murkowski, a lot of what we see is them just basically trying to keep the old GOP status quo, the warmonger, the tax and spend, the Bushite GOP going. And McConnell's going to be on that one too. But I know with Rand, with his libertarian leanings, it's like he's looking at this as an additional tax on people. So he's presenting it as such and he's voting as such. I don't particularly agree with him because I don't consider trade to be free and fair at this point, given what's imposed on us from other countries. But I see where he's coming from. So, yes, that vote did take place. It dies in the House. Let's grab one from Politico. After the vote, GOP senators line up with Democrats to oppose Trump's Canada tariffs. Suppose if I'd have just gone down the list a couple articles, I'd have got my answer. From Lisa Kaczynski, Jordan Carney, and Meredith Lee Hill. Republicans could be poised to deal a symbolic blow to Trump's trade policy, with several GOP senators indicating they plan to join Democrats on Tuesday to vote to block blanket tariffs on Canada. Susan Collins said Monday that she plans to back the resolution led by Tim Kaine. Imposing tariffs on Canada, which is our closest neighbor, a friendly ally, is a huge mistake and will cause disruption in the economies of both countries, Collins told reporters while wearing a Canada flag pin alongside a U.S. flag pin on her lapel. So we're doing the Ukraine thing over again, are we? Arvold says, I can see her face too, now I'm a believer. She warned of potential fallout, including job losses for her state's key industries, including lobstering and wood pulp, as well as potato and blueberry production. Collins is poised to join Rand Paul, who's a co-sponsor of Kaine's resolution, and a strong opponent of tariffs, Charles Grassley of Iowa, who did vote against this in the end. One of many farm state Republicans who has raised particular concerns about Canadian tariffs, also said he was undecided on the Kaine resolution. Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who has also expressed concerns about Trump's tariff plan for North American neighbors, expressed tentative support for this effort on Monday. He also wound up voting against this. A spokesperson said on Tuesday he would vote against Kaine's resolution. So, alright, the only significant Supreme Court decision regarding emergencies roundly discounted the ability to undo existing constitutional protections. It was a Northern newspaper editor who Lincoln wanted deleted for saying things that betrayed America during the Civil War. Bong says, Rand Paul proves my belief that there are libertarians, only libertarians. We know there are libertarians. Of course we do. On the Canadian side of this, though, pushing into the reciprocal way of things, leading Canadian conservatives say Ottawa should remove all tariffs as Liberation Day arrives. From Christopher Gooley. As Canadians brace themselves for Trump's Liberation Day of reciprocal tariffs on Wednesday, one political leader in Canada believes it could spark a start of a new era of Canada-US relations free of cross-border taxes. Maxime Bernier, who was a libertarian candidate in Canada, when I had Jen the Libertarian on Ed's World years ago, we talked about that because that's where he was first getting his start. I know that name. Who served as Foreign Affairs Minister in Prime Minister Stephen Harper's Conservative government, and now heads the right-wing People's Party of Canada. It's not a right-wing People's Party at all. And that's propaganda from Fox News, by the way. Told Fox News Digital in an interview from Halifax that it's absolutely in time for Canada to remove all tariffs against the US. He said the 25% duties the Canadian government under then Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau imposed on the US in early February to counter Trump's 25% tariffs against Canada won't hurt the Americans, it's hurting Canadians. You can type it in all caps, I'm still going to troll you with it. You can type it in all caps like a boomer on Truth Social, I'm still going to troll you with it. New Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said in a statement following his March 28th call with the president, the first contact between both leaders since Carney was elected, Liberal leader by his party nearly 3 weeks ago. that Canada would implement retaliatory tariffs in response to Wednesday's U.S. trade actions, which are in response to retaliatory tariffs against Canada. By the way, the PPC leader said that Trump should be told that the real reciprocal response to tariffs is 0 on our side, 0 on your side. That is free trade right there. That's what we're trying to get to here. Bernier said that instead, Carney and his main rival, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, are being fake patriots, using a dollar-for-dollar trade war against Trump and telling Canadians that's the best thing to do. We cannot impose counter... Oh, hold on. We cannot impose counter tariffs, said Bernier, who also served as an industry minister in the Harper government. The Americans are 10 times bigger than us, We won't win a trade war, he said, underscoring the retaliation will lead to a recession in Canada. But yes, that's the point that we're trying to get to, is have no tariffs at all. That's actually free trade. From Reuters, Canada to avoid counter tariffs on most U.S. food imports. Globe and Mail reports from Reuters. Canada will not impose retaliatory tariffs on most U.S. and other essentials, or on components essential to avoiding job losses in key sectors of the economy, the Globe and Mail reported on Tuesday, citing comments by 2 federal trade advisors. Dave McNaughton and Hassan Yusuf, who are both on PM Carney's U.S. Trade Advisory Panel, made the comments to the Globe and Mail ahead of the U.S. President Trump's latest round of tariffs. We're moving! We're moving! It's happening! We're getting places. Who else is canceling tariffs at this point because of Liberation Day? Israel! I have seen a lot of posts on X from people of a certain perspective that I probably can't say on YouTube or Twitch, who are asking the very, very, very vocal question of why does Israel even have tariffs on us, because we send them so much money otherwise? Well, apparently they don't anymore, and we're still going to send them money. Israel canceling all tariffs on U.S. products, from Stephen Saras. Israel announced Tuesday it's lifting all tariffs being imposed on U.S. products at the direction of PM Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders. Netanyahu said the move aims to cultivate more competition in the market, make the economy more diverse, and reduce the cost of living for the people of Israel. In addition to the economic benefit for economy and citizens of Israel, this move will allow us to further strengthen alliance and ties between Israel and the United States. Netanyahu said in a statement, "We will continue to work to remove barriers and tariffs and to reinforce our special relationship with the United States." Israel announced the plan in a joint statement from Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister of Finance Bezalel Smotrich, and the country's Minister of Economy and Industry Nir Barkat, just one day before Trump is set to levy reciprocal tariffs on U.S. trade partners. The U.S. is Israel's largest trading partner and closest ally. The bilateral trade worth $34 billion in 2024, according to the Office of the United States Trade Representative. So hey, more motion. The two allies signed a free trade agreement about 40 years ago, a deal that made around 99% of goods from the U.S. tax-free. We are frozen on Twitch, apparently. I might be on your end, because I am moving. Palm reached a 3-stream streak. Per my announcements over here. Yeah, I'm good at moving right now. I can see myself. Alright. It is fixed. Israeli officials said the tariff reduction would apply to a very limited number of products, chiefly U.S. food and agricultural imports. So, yep, those are going away. What else do we have? We knew that one already. They're going away quick, folks. On the fuel and energy side, speaking of a little bit more overseas stuff, Brian Allen analysis, which means op-ed, of course. Breaking. Trump ran his mouth about bombing Iran, and now the Iranian Revolutionary Guard just seized 2 oil tankers carrying over 3 million liters of diesel, which is about 1.5 million gallons. I think it's less than that, actually. So, the smallest tankers you could put on the ocean? Oil prices spiked more than 3% overnight, which makes absolutely no sense because this was refined diesel, not oil. Foreign policy, one threat away from a full-blown war. This is what happens when a wannabe strongman treats diplomacy like a demolition derby. Still waiting on those lower energy prices and no more foreign entanglements he promised. Instead, we're paying more at the pump while he plays war games on Twitter. There's no more Twitter, it's X. Now, there's some truth into this, but again, this actually has nothing to do with the running of the mouth. Iran's Revolutionary Guards seized 2 foreign tankers allegedly carrying smuggled diesel fuel. Iran's Revolutionary Guards on Monday seized 2 foreign tankers in the Persian Gulf carrying over 3 million liters. Or, yeah, it is way less than that, 792,516 US gallons of allegedly smuggled diesel fuel, Iranian state media reported. These 2 tankers with 25 crew members were engaged in organized fuel smuggling in the central waters of the Persian Gulf and were collectively carrying over 3 million liters of smuggled diesel fuel, state media reports. It gave no details on the tanker's nationality or whether the crew had been detained. The tankers are being transferred to the country's Basher port, according to the state media. Mehdi Moranges, a senior judiciary official at Basher province, that the ships were seized under a judicial order, the semi-official Fars news agency reported. So it has nothing to do with running of the mouth. Apparently people were trying to, and they don't give an idea what the destination was either, but it looks like people were trying to smuggle fuel to rebels of some sort, to a country that's got a sanction on them, to a country that Iran doesn't like. We don't know, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the U.S. Surprise, surprise. Thank you, Reuters, for that. Stoking tensions with the U.S., of course, but it had nothing to do with that. From Newsweek, Iran oil tanker seizure stokes tensions with the U.S. From Amir Daftari, the IRGC has seized 2 foreign oil tankers in the Persian Gulf, accusing them of smuggling diesel fuel. Why it matters. The incident highlights Iran's continued efforts to assert control over the Persian Gulf, a crucial route for global energy supplies, with past tanker seizures straining relationships between Tehran and Washington. The move could escalate tensions further. Iran has long cited fuel smuggling and maritime violations as justification for its actions, but critics argue these seizures are part of a broader geopolitical strategy. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I'm kind of leaning towards they aren't. The IRGC, 2nd Naval District, intercepted the vessels in a maritime operation and is transferring them to the port of Bashir. These 2 tankers were systemically engaged in fuel smuggling and were identified through intelligence monitoring by IRGC naval forces. The unit said in a statement they're now being moved to the Bashir oil pier under judicial order for fuel confiscation. And again, before I jump to where we're going with this, I need to know what nation they were flagged for. Like, in 23 rather, the IRGC seized the Advantage Suite, a Marshall Islands flag tanker. In 24, they captured another Marshall Islands flag tanker, the St. Nicholas. And in 2019, they seized the British-flagged Stena Impero, accusing it of ramming a fishing boat. The tanker was released 2 months later. So, they've done this before, but until we know exactly where this came from and what its destination was, it's all speculation at this point. And no, this would have absolutely nothing to do with the oil prices based on the fact that this was already refined. Alright, speaking of ocean seizures, from DW, a German publication. Germany seizes a suspected Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker. From Richard Connor. A confiscation order has been issued for the oil tanker Eventon and some 100,000 metric tons of oil aboard it, the German news magazine Spiegel reported on Friday. If confirmed, the order means that the vessel and its cargo, worth some 40 million euros, or 43.3 million freedom dollars, would become German property. Because stoking Russia right now is a fantastic idea. The ship's presence, floating in the Baltics near the island of Rügen, had sparked environmental concerns about the danger of potential oil spill. The vessel had been traveling from Russia to Egypt when it was held for investigation by German authorities in January. Why was it in the Baltics? We gotta get the map out. Oops, not that one. This one. I mean, it would depend on where the refinery would come from, I guess. But I thought that the big deal about going into Crimea was the fact that they wanted the warm water port to go through by Istanbul, which used to be Constantinople. But now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. And then you can go straight shot down to Egypt instead of... Because yeah, if they're in the Baltics, then they've got to go clear the hell around here, possibly through the English Channel, of course, to come all the way back into the Mediterranean to get to Egypt. That makes no sense to me. The only thing I can think of is unless the refinery is like right here in St. Petersburg. I don't know, something seems off on this one. As EA Daily reported, the German authorities replaced the crew of the Panamanian-flagged oil tanker Eventon, confiscated by customs in March, and took control of the vessel and cargo. This was reported by Bloomberg with reference to a representative of the German Ministry of Finance. In January, a tanker carrying oil from the Russian port of Ust-Luga suffered an engine failure and was towed to the coast of Germany. According to Der Spiegel, there were 100,000 tons of oil on board, and the ship itself is part of the Shadow Fleet, with help of which the Russian Federation bypasses Western sanctions. So, yeah. This is a little bit of playing with fire on that one. Alright, where are we at now? Hour 42 into the program. Now we're going to talk about the title card, finally. We got all the foreign stuff out of the way at this point. Cory Booker makes history with the longest Senate floor speech in protest of Trump agenda. From Morgan Rimmer and Manu Raju, Claire Ferran, and Ted Barrett over at CNN, reporting on this one. Looks like we had some tornadoes last night too. Democratic Senator Cory Booker mounted a historic protest on the Senate floor across 2 days, warning against the harms he said Trump's admin is inflicting on the American public. The New Jersey Democrat spoke for 25 hours and 5 minutes, according to his office, breaking the record for the longest floor speech in modern history of the chamber. Booker, 55, surpassed the late Senator. I'm surprised they even brought this one back up. Honestly. Surpassed the late Senator Strom Thurmond's speech, which lasted 24 hours and 18 minutes in 1957. Booker said that he was speaking in spite of the previous record holder's remarks against the 1957 Civil Rights Act. Yes, as a reminder, Booker's speech, breaking the record, breaks the previous record held also by a Democrat who was filibustering against the Civil Rights Act. Since I've gotten to the Senate, I've always felt it was a strange shadow hanging over this institution, that the longest speech, all the issues that have come up, all of the noble causes that people have done, or the things that typically try to stop, I just found it strange that he had the record, Booker told CNN. And as a guy who grew up with the legends of the civil rights movement, myself, my parents, and their friends, it just would seem wrong to me. It always seemed wrong. He began the speech at 7 p.m. Eastern Time Monday with a vow to keep his protest going as long as he was physically able, and with nothing, he told CNN, but a Bible verse in his pocket. The marathon speaking session from Booker, a member of the Senate Democratic leadership team, comes as his party faces increasing pressure from the voters to take a harder line against Trump. Locked out of power in Washington, Democrats have limited options and have struggled to find a unified strategy to counter the admin, but Booker's speech stands out as one of the most high-profile forms of protest by a Democratic lawmaker so far in Trump's second term. The speech effectively delayed any legislative business in the Senate on Tuesday, as it was stretched late into the day, though it amounts to primarily symbolic rebuke, as Booker was not attempting to hold up any specific piece of legislation. Yeah, that's because there was nothing that was going on at the time. We'll talk about that a little bit later. There were no votes scheduled, there was no debate scheduled. There was nothing that was actually happening that he was delaying or filibustering. He did it for attention, and quite honestly, when I look at this, and I look at it more, and I realize the fact that there was nothing on the agenda, shy of the fact that he came out and made this speech that I'm sure that only partisan people listen to. I like my audience here, but even I'm not going to torture myself and listen to this whole speech, just so you know. But I think that they're fielding, because let's be realistic and let's be partisan and political for just a moment and talk about what's happening. There is no leadership right now in the Democratic Party. They don't know who their standard bearer is. They had Joe Biden. He failed on the debate stage. Harris got roundly rejected by the American people. So, especially for their run for 2028, non-incumbent versus non-incumbent, they do need to come back and figure out pretty quickly who is going to hold their mantle. And I think they're doing things like the Alyssa Slotkin speech that they did as the rebuttal for the State of the Union speech. Speeches like this, and some of the speeches that Gillibrand was doing during the Signal chat, they're starting to try to field who their next candidate is going to be. And I think Booker is on the short list. I think he is the one that they're going to come back out and try to means test and field test, and it's going to be hard with him and Gillibrand as well, because they've both run for the presidency before, and they did so in 2020. I think both of them did. I know Gillibrand did in 2016. But yes, I think that this was a means test, and I've seen some of the more partisan accounts on Instagram and X, both, who are now thinking that they feel so alive because Cory Booker gave this 25-hour speech. That's kind of what pushed me in the direction of that's what they're going to try to do, is push one of these people up and see who gets the biggest means test to get to the top. Because there was no other point to this, and I know that Banning brought it up earlier and he's bringing it up now again. He brought it up before, but does anybody remember how Newt Gingrich would turn on the C-SPAN cameras and give speeches to an empty chamber? I'm a little bit young to remember that, but yeah, it was basically publicity, as was said in there. Arbolt says, I vaguely remember that. That was before I was really politically involved, but I've seen some of it in retrospect. And I know at the time, too, he was being talked about as a possible presidential contender as well. Alright, let's keep going here. No bathroom breaks. How Booker accomplished the record Senate speech. From Philippe Timotija. Now, I'm sure now with modern times and modern technology, as Palm was pointed out when we were talking about this off camera, there probably were diapers or something involved in this. I haven't read this article, so I can't come back out and say, but there were probably adult diapers or stuff involved with this. But if we look back at like the floor speeches and the filibuster speeches of old, in the 18th and the 19th century, imagine the fact that you're standing up at that podium right now and realizing the fact that 150 years ago somebody probably peed himself on that podium to try to keep a filibuster going. Puts things into perspective on that. Cory Booker set a new record for the longest Senate speech in history on Monday and Tuesday by holding the upper chamber's floor for more than 24 hours, or 25 hours rather. Let's see. This is how Booker, who's represented the Garden State since 2013, accomplished the record Senate speech. Booker turns 56 later this month, an age where many men cannot avoid going to the bathroom during the middle of an 8-hour sleep. But Booker did not use the bathroom for the entirety of his speech. After it was over, he said he allowed himself to be dehydrated to get through the speech. Again, I don't want my doctor to be mad at me, but I really spent time dehydrating myself beforehand, so I would not have to go to the bathroom, Booker told reporters on Tuesday night. My challenge was that my strategy was to stop eating. I think I stopped eating on Friday, and then to stop drinking the night before. I started on Monday, and then I had its benefit, but it also really had its downsides. And so instead of fighting or figuring out how to go to the bathroom, I really unfortunately dehydrating myself. Booker had to remain standing and could not leave his desk for the length of his speech. To help prevent Booker from sitting down, a Senate aide took away Booker's chair, according to the Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Booker didn't eat the entire time he was on the Senate floor blasting Trump's policies, sparking chatter that he should run for president in 2020. There it is, right there. There it is. For a second time, Booker previously was a candidate in 2020. I fasted for days into it. I stopped drinking water a long time ago. I think that had a good and bad benefits. I definitely started cramping up from lack of water, Booker told reporters. So if some of you saw me really drink nothing at the end, I was just trying to stop my muscles from cramping. Booker also completed an all-nighter, depriving himself of any sleep. He acknowledged it wasn't easy, and it was even harder in his 50s than it would have been in his 40s. So it's just a lot of physical challenges, definitely making it that long for a guy, said Chris Murphy. As Chris Murphy and I joked, we're not in the same spot in our 40s like we were 9 years ago, Booker said. Murphy in 2016 held a lengthy filibuster of 14 hours and 50 minutes. After dozens of people were killed in the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. Murphy was 51. Who's now 51, was 43 at the time. Which, by the way, I remember that speech as well, and there was also no legislative business going on at the time. So, Booker did have a brief break at noon Eastern Time on Tuesday when he halted his speech to permit the Senate to have an opening prayer. Senate Chaplain Barry Black specifically thanked Capitol Police, Senate floor staff, and pages for their work and stretched throughout the night. Booker read some of the letters his constituents wrote to him, saying they are being impacted by the actions of the Trump admin. So, yeah. Let's look at that one. Quest says he elevated the power of the speaker position. He had almost as much power as Bill Clinton. So, yeah. Basically, he said nothing important. He means tested himself for the presidency, and they're probably going to go try to run him and pretend he's a dark horse that nobody's ever heard of again. Alright, what else do we have? Yeah, Zeke Arkham with this one too. So let's get this straight. Cory Booker wasn't filibustering for a vote. There wasn't a pressing issue on the floor. There wasn't anything on the agenda. Cory Booker spoke for 24 hours. 25, give credit where credit is due. I don't like Cory Booker, but I'll give him the credit for that. For checks notes. Looks to the other side of the notes, looks at other notes, puts notes down and checks phone. Nothing. Dude did it just to get attention, same way he spoke with really bad Spanish during the Democratic debates. They wonder why Democrats are the party of immature children. That is a quote. That is not the opinion of the host of this program. So let's look at a Daily Wire article here quick, and then there's a response to the X that we just read. All right, from the Daily Wire, even Democrat operatives. What's going on? Why are we not loading things? Did Daily Wire go down? So Daily Wire had an article saying even Democrat operatives are throwing cold water on Booker's stunt, but for whatever reason it will not load. That's really strange. Let me see if I can pull this back from history. Boy, I love technical difficulties in the morning. Huh, now it came up. I had to completely close the tab and then reopen in a different window. Alright, even Democrat operatives are throwing cold water on Booker's stunt. From Virginia Ruta. Former President Biden's longtime comms director, Kate Bedingfield, tossed cold water on Booker's marathon speech on Tuesday, saying it was unlikely to move the needle with regard to business as usual at the Capitol. Bedingfield weighed in on Booker's lengthy address, which at 25 hours and 5 minutes is the longest in U.S. Senate history, during an appearance on CNN shortly after the New Jersey senator passed the 24-hour mark, and she argued that the overall impact of the stunt was likely to be minimal at best. Like I said, he is doing that to means test his presidential run. And the DNC is pushing it, because I think that's who they're going to go back and put up. Let's watch.
The Democratic base and Democratic donors are looking for signs of life. And so I think what Senator Booker is giving them here is some signs of life. Is it going to have a tangible impact on business in Washington?
I mean, if he is still alive after this.
It's not. It may have a tangible impact on Senator Booker, but it won't have a tangible impact on business in Washington.
Bedingfield gave the good news first, saying she believed Booker's lengthy diatribe might actually pull some weight with the DNC base and its donors, whom she said were simply waiting for someone with the party to show signs of life. It may have a tangible impact on Booker, but it won't have a tangible impact on business in Washington, Bedingfield repeated later, laughing. So, and even there with the response. Lori Ann responding to Zeke Arkham, the ex that we read before. Does anybody else find it strange he's on the Senate floor making a spectacle of himself while his aide is caught with a gun? Does anybody else think this is an alibi of some sorts? What is it that Lori Ann is referring to? From Politico. Cory Booker staffer arrested on charges of carrying a pistol without a license. Anti-gun Cory Booker, by the way. From Nicholas Wu. U.S. Capitol Police arrested a staffer for Booker on charges of carrying a pistol without a license, the department announced on Tuesday. This is D.C. You need a license for such things. Authorities arrested the staffer, named by Capitol Police as Kevin Batts, on Monday after Batts told officers outside the Senate galleries he was armed. The department said Batts had been led by Booker around security screening at the Senate office building earlier in the day, according to the department. All weapons are prohibited from Capitol grounds, even if you're a retired law enforcement officer or have a permit to carry in another state or the District of Columbia, the department said. Which, yes, they have the permit in the District of Columbia, but it is an act of God to get it. Lawmakers are given broad leeway to request bypasses of security screening for staffers and guests who accompany them into the Capitol buildings, though the department frowns on the practice. Booker has been giving a marathon speech on the Senate floor in protest of Trump's admin and Hill Republicans. Senator Booker's office employs a retired Newark police detective as a New Jersey-based driver who often accompanies him to events, said Jeff Geertz, a spokesman for Booker. We're working to better understand the circumstances around this. So, in the midst of this, his staffer got caught with a gun. I probably shouldn't chug that too fast. That's the last one. My favorite mint milk that we talked about earlier on in Contemporary had its temporary run in Quick Trip, and it is gone. They're running their new flavor alongside of it as they sell it back out, but that's probably the last bottle I'm going to get. All right. Surprising absolutely nobody from ABC News. Civil rights groups sue Trump over executive order requiring citizenship proof in registering to vote. I knew that this was going to come. Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution prohibits this being done at a federal level, based on the fact the Constitution explicitly states that the regulation of elections shall be done by the states. This was probably an open and shut case. From Dina Zaru, they're going to use a different reasoning behind it, of course. They're going to say my racism and my sexism and things like that, but civil rights groups, including the NAACP, filed a federal lawsuit on Tuesday challenging Trump's efforts to overhaul the election system. The EO, which Trump signed on March 25th, requires stricter voting regulations in federal elections, including showing proof of citizenship when registering to vote. The ACLU is among the groups representing the plaintiffs in the complaint. We know that providing documentation in general tends to fall more heavily on people who are already having so many obstacles thrown in their lives at them, ACLU attorneys Sophia Lynn Lakin told ABC News. These are real barriers for populations that unfortunately intersect very much with voters of color, which the ACLU continues to infantilize people of color. Lakin highlighted logistical obstacles such as transportation, childcare, responsibilities, and financial barriers that can prevent people from obtaining and paying out of pocket for documents like passports and naturalization certificates. The order directs the Election Assistance Commission, an independent agency at the U.S. government that supports election officials, to require people to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote to prevent non-citizens from voting. This comes after the president and his Republican allies characterized the non-citizen voting during the 2024 campaign as widespread, a false claim that was debunked by experts and by a spate of GOP-led inquiries in the weeks leading up to the election, which found that non-citizen voting is extraordinarily rare. it rare or is it not reported? And then they go on to racist, xenophobic, sexist, hateful, hatred, whatever other buzzword they want to go back and put into it. When they don't even need to go back and use up their bank of buzzwords. All they need to do is go back and say, Article 2, Section 1. Amend the Constitution if you want it changed. Alright. Kyle Becker, who is one of the paid conservative shills, does bring up an interesting point. Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, and the DNC have filed a lawsuit against Trump to stop his executive order banning non-citizens from voting in the U.S. elections. Now, why would they do that? That in and of itself, the way that it's worded, is questionable, of course. But again, there's really no way to go back and do that based on the Constitution and the constitutionality as it sits. Lunacy said someone failed to inform CISA about the states controlling elections. Yeah. Alright, in local political news, Xavier Becerra is running a bid for California governor, which suggests possibly that Newsom is going to get moved around and shuffled around somewhere else in the political system. I don't think they're going to throw him under the bus, but I don't think a Biden admin official would make the move unless that there were already plans to make some other move with Newsom. He is one of their rising stars. I think he has got way too much baggage. I think they're going to try to run him in the primary, but he's got too much baggage. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. But I think they might shuffle him around to like a representative or a Senate seat. Possibly. From Melanie Mason. It would be interesting, though, if like the DNC didn't want this to happen, and now they have to go back and call a Biden official a Russian agent, a Russian chaos agent. That'd be an interesting one to watch. I might need some more popcorn for that one. Xavier Becerra, the former health secretary under Joe Biden, is joining the burgeoning field to be California's next governor, regardless of whether Kamala Harris seeks the post. The former California AG, who's been mulling a run for the state's top job for at least a year, launched his bid in a brief video on Wednesday he first shared with Politico. I watched my parents, a construction worker and a clerical worker, achieve the California dream. Becerra said in a bare-bones direct-to-camera clip. Can we do that today with this affordability crisis? Very tough. But we've been taking on these tough fights. We can do that. But you need a leader who can be tough. Becerra's entrance into the race interjects new intrigue into a contest that for months has been stagnant, as Democrats and their deep-pocketed funders wait to see if the former vice president will jump into the fray. But recently, the campaign has seen stirrings. Former Rep. Katie Porter, that'd be an interesting one to watch, launched her own bid last month, and other contenders have taken increasingly pointed swipes at Harris and her drawn-out decision timeline. Becerra's campaign insists he would not drop out of the race even if Harris, the Democrats' nominee for president in 2024, declares her candidacy for governor. In his own bid, Becerra, 67, is not overtly carrying the progressive banner or pitching himself as a centrist Democrat. Instead, he seeks to make the race a referendum on experience, hoping to convince voters he has the most credibility and manages to manage the gigantic state and take on Trump, whom he sued more than 120 times when he was the California AG during the president's first term. Yeah, like I said, I don't think the DNC is going to let Newsom go out of the party based on his ties with Nancy Pelosi, number one, being her nephew. So if they're starting to let people line up to go back after the seat, it does kind of sound like they're going to go back and put him somewhere else. Where that is, I don't know. This would be an interesting race to watch, especially. Let's see, what else do we have? And we've got a tweet, an X, that kind of falls into the no crap territory. Dozens of House Democrats have pledged to vote against the SAVE Act, legislation that would require voters to present identification in federal elections. You might as well just make that headline be, House Democrats have pledged to vote against any bill that's brought forward by anybody who has an R next to their name. Because that's literally what this is. And the House is in lockstep on that one at this current iteration of Congress. If a Republican came through and introduced the Federal Funding to Save Puppies Act, Democrats would vote against it in lockstep. Quest Banning says California COVID lockdowns were a disaster with many more net deaths than there been no intervention. However, I'm cynical that any Democrat sycophant would blame Newsom. Correct. I think a lot of I'm sure a lot of Page Shills know that he did the French Laundry thing, but I don't think that any of them would say it. We've got Jennifer Get in the Good Trouble with an X that says, flashing red light. The Greater Cleveland Food Bank lost 20 truckloads, $2 million worth of emergency food this week due to Trump admin cuts. That's millions of pounds of food's gone. The Today in Ohio podcast hosts are calling it out. This is either incompetence or deliberate cruelty, with an image showing produce spilled out on the highway saying cruelty is the point. Now, this is an AI-generated image, by the way. Anybody who's ever driven a truck knows the fact that they don't get stacked completely up to the ceiling boards like that with anything, no matter what. And you're at a point where, yes, you'd get up to the dock and everything would come back out and spilling out like it is on the highway there if you attempted to do that. Not to mention the fact that these trucks would all be insanely overweight off of this. Now, I have not seen the manifest data to go through this. Yes, there have been funding cuts to the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. But this is an AI-generated image to foment outrage. Coming from somebody who's had a CDL before and has taken loads before, knowing how trucks actually get loaded, and it's not like that by any stretch of the imagination. From WKYC Studios, Channel 3, deeply outraged, Mayor Justin Bibb slams Trump admin for cutting 553,000 pounds of food for the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. From Dave De Natale, Justin Bibb has responded to the move by the Trump admin to cancel an order for over 500,000 pounds of food, which have been scheduled to be received by the Greater Cleveland Food Bank between April and July of this year. According to the GCFB, the 30 truckloads of food ordered from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Commodity Credit Corporation, 20 have been stopped. Go away. What the hell? Oh, I don't want a weather impact alert. I want to learn about the trucks. The 20 loads, or roughly 550,000 pounds of foods valued at $1 million, was to include milk, eggs, chicken, pork, and turkey. I'm deeply outraged by the Trump admin's unjust decision to withhold 553,000 pounds of food that was intended to help Ohio families in desperate need. This egregious action not only deprives 500,000 individuals, including children, served by the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, but also threatens the health, safety, and well-being of our Northeast Ohio community, Bibb wrote in a statement released on Thursday. This week's news comes as the Greater Cleveland Food Bank also deals with the impending loss of nearly 1 million pounds of food from the local Food Purchase Assistance Program this summer as part of the cuts by the Trump admin. There's a difference between scaling back the federal footprint and callously stripping food from families who rely on it for survival. The starkness of this distinction is so profound that it's almost unimaginable that such a decision could even be considered, let alone executed, Bibb added. I'm a bit confused by this one myself. Now, I don't know how local Ohio politics work on this. I know locally here, typically food banks are on a donation standard, as far as I knew, that it's people donate to them. I didn't realize that there was any federal input to this, but I've never been to one, so I didn't know that there was ever fresh food with them. I only ever seen canned food come out of it and go into it. I know when I was in school, we did non-perishable drives, so brought canned goods, mac and cheese, rice-a-roni, things like that, stuff that didn't go bad sitting up on the shelf, of course. How Ohio does it is, it might be entirely different. But then my next question, of course, is if this was supposed to be coming from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, then where did it go otherwise? If they put the stop to the food, that implies to me that it was already there. So where does it go? I have a lot of questions about this one. And I don't know what's right or wrong about it either on this one, honestly. I mean, if the food is physically there, earmarked for food bank, then I don't necessarily understand the point of stopping it. Now, replenishing that food on federal funds, that would be a different thing. But if it's physically there, what are we doing with it? Because it's going to go bad. So let's figure this out at some point here. Bibb says admin will continue to stand in full support of the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, offering both our time and resources in solidarity with residents we serve. He also encouraged residents to consider making a donation to the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, which, by the way, if you are outraged by this, I encourage you to do just that. There's a 404 for that one. Website for that not found. Greater Cleveland Bank. Let's get a link for that. So if you do want to make a donation to this, which I encourage you to do so as well, I will have the link for that in the Discord in general. We're still talking about gingers over in the Discord as well. Why? Don't know. Anyway, that's that story. All right, from Politico. Fanning says probably getting a federal block grant, so likely from HHS or admin for families and children. This could have something to do with the crackdown on HHS. It's possible. Trump moves to strip unionization rights from most federal workers. From Hassan Ali Kanu. President Trump is trying to revoke collective bargaining rights from most federal employees, the latest move in his aggressive campaign to weaken the federal workforce. Boy, you couldn't phrase that one any more objectively. President Trump is trying to revoke, Trump issued an executive order late Thursday, relying on a rarely used provision of the federal labor law that authorizes the president to exclude agencies from longstanding unionization rights if he determines that those agencies are primarily engaged in national security work. So it's not all. The order purports to end collective bargaining with federal unions at numerous federal agencies and subdivisions, including the Department of Agriculture, Defense, Health and Human Services, Justice, State and Veterans Affairs, as well as the EPA and USAID. It also authorizes the Transportation Secretary to exclude the Federal Aviation Admin, another subdivision from labor rights. Some of this I agree with, some of this I don't. Now, particularly when you're unionized like this, it's supposed to be you as the union against your employer in bargaining. The problem that I have with most government agencies in public sector unions is the fact that you're bargaining against the taxpayer, and you're supposed to be adversarial to the taxpayer in this. But my standing on public sector unions, with that aside, because we've debated that to death on this channel before, I've had 2 debates on this channel with this one, and one on another channel over this. But with that being said, I do understand agencies like especially the FAA, law enforcement agencies, etc., actually having representation for this. In a situation where you might actually have to deal with, when you're in enforcement of law of some sort, and the FAA, I think, with TSA being involved, does fall into that, although to a lesser extent. But like with the FBI, I wouldn't be opposed to them having a union so that if worse comes to worse and they do have to draw their service weapon, then they have representation built in already. The union takes care of that, so that they can go to court, they can defend themselves, etc. It's one of the big points that I've made against full-out mega conservatives on law enforcement unions as well, like local police unions. Whereas I don't necessarily think the EMS union needs to exist. For the police, it's probably nice for them to have lawyers at the ready, etc., for the kind of job that they need to do. The order will eliminate collective bargaining rights from roughly 67% of the entire federal workforce and 75% of workers who are already in a union, according to a report by a government executive, a publication that covers the business of government primarily for an audience of senior bureaucrats. The anti-unionization move comes amid a series of other efforts to drastically deplete the federal workforce and bring the bureaucracy under the strict control of the White House. The Trump admin is trying to fire tens of thousands of probationary federal employees despite initial court rulings blocking the terminations. And many agencies are implementing massive reductions in workforce. Federal employees' unions have been at the forefront of legal challenges to many of Trump's actions in the first 2 months of his term. They filed a lawsuit seeking to halt Elon Musk's government efficiency operation from accessing sensitive federal data, to block policies making it easier to fire government officials, and to reinstate thousands of fired federal workers, among others. One major union for federal employees pledged to swiftly challenge Trump's new executive order in court. Trump's latest executive order is a disgraceful and retaliatory attack on the rights of hundreds of thousands of patriotic American civil servants, nearly a third of whom are veterans, simply because they are members of a union that stands up to harmful policies, the American Federation of Government Employees President Everett Kelly said in a statement. The AFGE is preparing immediate legal actions. I question the stand up to harmful policies thing of that as well, because, and I know that they're talking about admin policies, but with the fact that these have existed since before the admin that they hated, it seems ironic to me that there's an accusation of harmful policies coming from these unions against the organization that literally has the OSHA as the Occupational Safety and Health Administration is literally a part of the employer that they're unionizing against. There's a deep set of irony to that in my mind. Where this goes, I'm not sure. Public sector unions have always been a sticky point to me based on the fact that I do encourage people outside of the corporate unions, because having worked for several corporate unions, AFL-CIO associate unions, I've often felt that in their situations they're trying to line their own pockets while making it seem like they're doing something for their employees, while still getting paid from the company they're supposed to be adversarial to from their payroll department. And I've always had a question about that. I've always encouraged people, though, if you have the money, the means, and the concerns, get a group of yourselves together outside of the company's payroll, pull your money together, get the lawyer to help you, draw up a contract for employment, etc. Because then you're outside of the company's payroll and you know that the money's actually working for yourselves and not the company and the union shaking hands behind your back, and then the union coming back and said, look at this quarter raise I got for you. Alright, what else do we have? Leading report. Republicans are introducing legislation to abolish the TSA. The pushback to this and the way that it was worded came from people that really surprised me on this one. And it's real, by the way. From ABC4. Mike Lee is introducing a bill to abolish the TSA. Let's put some volume to this, and let's listen. If I can find where my cursor is.
Utah Senator Mike Lee announced a new bill aimed at abolishing the TSA. Lee called the TSA bloated and ineffective and said he wants to replace it with a new Office of Aviation Security. Lee released a statement.
So it's not actually going away, they're just going to repopulate it.
Saying in part, the TSA has not only intruded into the privacy and personal space of most Americans, it has also repeatedly failed tests to find weapons and explosives. If passed, Lee says Congress would have 90 days to form this new Aviation Security Oversight Committee.
So, yes, it's apparently going away. But the people, again, with Fox News, Dems ridicule bill aimed at abolishing TSA, suggest bin Laden and the Ayatollah would support it. I'm old enough to remember 10 years ago when a comment like that would be called evil, conservative, and Islamophobic. From Elks Nitzberg. 2 House Democrats appear to ridicule Mike Lee's bid to abolish the TSA. Who supports my bill to abolish the TSA? Lee asked in a post on X. Bin Laden. Jared Moskowitz of Florida wrote in a response to Lee's question. The Ayatollah, probably. Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida replied to Lee. The TSA was created in the wake of the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks. I mean, this is like Bush rhetoric, Bush Republican rhetoric. Oh, the evil brown people are supporting you taking away the TSA. Laugh if you want, you know I'm right. Lee and Tommy Tuberville introduced the Abolish the TSA Act of 2025 last week, which, and again, they're not actually going to abolish the TSA. They're going to rename the TSA and make it into something else that does basically the exact same thing. The measure would call for a Homeland Security Secretary in consultation with the Transportation Secretary to submit to Congress a plan to create an Office of Aviation Security Oversight. In the Federal Aviation Administration, the office would oversee and regulate the aviation security activity. So it wouldn't be a TSA agent that you have to scream, "It's a pre-check, not a date, Jerry." It would be an officer of the Office of Aviation Security Oversight that you would scream that at that point. It's literally going to do the exact same thing. The Secretary would also need to furnish plans to shift aviation security activity and equipment to private companies and to transfer the Department of Transportation any functions, personnel, assets, and liabilities of the admin with respect to surface transportation, including activities relating to mass transit, freight, rail, highway, motor carriers, and pipelines, according to the measure. But why? More local political news. Authorities investigate damaging fire at New Mexico's GOP headquarters. From the Associated Press. I've got no author given on this one. Federal authorities are investigating a fire early Sunday that damaged the entryway to the headquarters of the Republican Party of New Mexico in Albuquerque. Agents working with the local authorities recovered unspecified incendiary materials at the scene, said Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives spokesperson Cody Monday. He declined to say what materials were or to share further details. The fire follows numerous acts of vandalism in recent weeks directed against Tesla, the electric car company whose owner, Elon Musk, has led Republican President Donald Trump's efforts to slash the federal workforce. Several of those cases involve Molotov cocktails that were used to start fires at dealerships. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has called it a wave of domestic terrorism. It's not domestic terrorism. It's just a boycott. It's just people boycotting the Albuquerque GOP. Attacks on property carrying the logo of Musk's electric car company are cropping up across the U.S. and overseas. While no injuries have been reported, Tesla showrooms, vehicle lots, charging stations, and privately owned cars have been targeted. Again, it's a boycott, remember. It's not actual terrorism. And they are suspecting arson, per ABC News, from Megan Forrester. The flames were brought under control within 5 minutes of their arrival, and there were no reported injuries, Fire and Rescue said. The words ICE equals KKK were also spray painted on the building, officials have said. Again, it's a boycott. This horrific attack, fueled by hatred and intolerance, is a direct assault on our values, freedoms, and a right to political expression, party officials said in a statement on Sunday. Party officials said this is not an isolated incident, claiming it's part of a disturbing pattern of politically motivated violence that's plagued our country, fueled in part by silence and implicit encouragement from progressive leaders who refuse to condemn these acts. So, there we have on that. Alright, speaking of Musk. From Politico News, Trump tells Inner Circle that Musk will leave soon. From Rachel Bade. Trump told his inner circle, including members of his cabinet, that Elon Musk will be stepping back in the coming weeks from his current role as governing partner, ubiquitous cheerleader, and Washington hatchet man. The president remains pleased with Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency initiative, but both men have decided in recent days that it will soon be time for Musk to return to his business and take on a supporting role, according to 3 Trump insiders who were granted anonymity to describe the evolving relationship. Musk's looming exit comes as some Trump admin insiders and many outside allies have become frustrated with his unpredictability and increasingly view the billionaire as a political liability. The dynamic that was thrown into stark relief Tuesday when a conservative judge Musk vocally supported lost his bid for a Wisconsin Supreme Court seat by 10 points. We'll be talking about that. It also represents a shift in the Trump-Musk relationship from a month ago, when White House officials and allies were predicting Musk was here to stay, and that Trump would find a way to blow past the 130-day time limit. One senior admin official said Musk is likely to retain any informal role as an advisor, and continue to be an occasional face around the White House. Another caution that anyone who thinks Musk is going to disappear entirely from Trump's orbit is fooling themselves. The transition, the insider said, is likely to correspond to the end of Musk's time as a special government employee, a special status that temporarily exempts him from some ethics and conflict of interest rules. That 130-day period is expected to expire in late May or early June. Musk's defenders inside the admin believe that the time will soon be right for a transition, given their view that there's only so much he can cut from the government agencies without shaving too close to the bone. But many other Trump allies say he's unpredictable, unmanageable force who's had issues communicating his plans with cabinet secretaries and through the White House. chain of command led by Chiefs of Staff Susie Wiles, frequently sending them into a frenzy with unexpected and off-message comments on X, his social media platform, including sharing unvetted and uncoordinated plans to gut federal agencies. And that's a part of the problem, too, because one of the things that was lost on the anti-Trump messaging, and I think one of the things that was lost on a lot of the pro-Trump messaging, was the fact that Musk, in his role, never had the actual ability to fire people. From the beginning, he never had that ability. It was an informal role, it was an advisory role. He can come out and go through the books and say, hey, you're losing money on this, you're losing money on this, you're losing money on this. But it was on him to go back to the department heads and say, okay, now what are you going to do about it? I can't do anything more about this. What are you going to do about this? And I was hoping, I'm a bit disappointed in the Doge department myself. I like the idea that they've found places to go back and do this, and they've said, hey, we found this, we found this, we found this. But outside of classified information, there's been no real receipt to back up where they found this money. And that's when it was first announced to me that we were going to have this Department of Government Efficiency. That was what I prayed for, was to actually get the receipts, to get documentation of this is the amount of money, this is where we found, this is where it originated from, this is where it's going. And we never really got that. So at this point it really became more of a non-oversight government firing spree with nothing really to go with it. So that's something to say of their concerns about Musk being a political liability who has served as a rallying point for fractured Democrats. In Wisconsin, Musk's opponent seized his millions of dollars of spending in the judicial race, with some openly calling it a referendum on the polarizing mogul. So there's a lot of stuff that's moving with that. I think this could have been done a lot better. I do. But the 130 days are coming up soon too, so it's probably getting to be about that time to have the conversation. From CNBC, on the business side of this though, Tesla shares rise on report Elon Musk could be leaving Doge post soon. So once he's out of the government, people want to go buy his car again. From Laura Kolodny and Fred Imbert. Tesla shares rose on Wednesday after Politico reported that Elon Musk could leave his post at the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, paving the way for the CEO to return his focus on the struggling electric vehicle maker. The White House later called the report garbage. Musk also posted on X, fake news, in response to the news. The stock closed more than 5% higher at its session lows, when it had dropped as much as 6.4% on the back of weaker than expected vehicle deliveries for the first quarter. The report, which cites Trump insiders, noted that while President Trump is pleased with Musk and the Doge spending cuts that have been pushed through, the two decided in recent days that the billionaire would soon return to his business. NBC News reported that Trump told Cabinet that Musk could leave in the coming months. A senior government official told NBC News that Musk would leave at the end of a 130-day stint as a special government employee. So we see the rise, we see the drop, and we see the rise coming back again for Tesla. It was nice to get some of it while it was on sale, though, that's for sure. All right, going on to local news from ABC 16. Mississippi governor signs bill eliminating state income tax. Crystal Tisme. Huzzah! Tate Reeves signed a bill into law that would eliminate the state income tax. We fought hard to get this done, and it's finally happening, Reeves said on social media. It will lead to more money in your pocket. Earlier this month, the Mississippi House passed a Senate plan that would gradually eliminate state income tax. Under the plan, the income tax will drop by 0.25% each year until 2030, when it reaches 3%. From that point on, the tax will drop gradually depending on the gap between the state's revenue and expenses until it's eventually eliminated entirely. The proposal will also cut the grocery tax from its current 7%, the highest in the nation, which is on par with Illinois, by the way, at this point, to 5% in a one-time cut effective on July 1st. It's still pretty high, though, for grocery. I know in Wisconsin we have no grocery tax whatsoever, as long as it's not a prepared food. As long as basically you can't just pick it up and, well, I guess no, fruit and vegetables would come into that too. If it's not prepared and cooked, like if you have to take it home and make it, there's no tax on it. I believe that even extends as far as like Papa Murphy's pizza. But I'd have to look at my last Papa Murphy's receipt to make sure on that one. To make up for the funding cut, the gas tax will gradually increase 9 cents from the current rate of 18 cents per gallon. It will then increase to 27 cents by July 27th. After that, it could be further raised to help the state fund road work. So it'll be more expensive to get gas, but you'll have more money in your pocket as you go. And what's nice about that, and it's kind of the same thing that I've seen with tolls as well, is a lot of the times with that, it helps get money off of your tourism sector. People coming through there to go see the Mississippi Delta or things like that. I've often said I don't like the idea of having tolls in Wisconsin, but if they ran the corridor basically from I-90 from La Crosse to Janesville and just ran a toll on that one, that would catch almost entirely out-of-state traffic. '94 would catch a lot of in-state stuff still. It would catch some out-of-state, but the 190 to 39 would be almost, I would say, 70 to 80% out-of-state traffic. Because all the rest of us locals know how to get around that. And there are other states that do this as well. I know that New Hampshire doesn't have an income tax. They don't have a sales tax either. However, if you ever decide you want to own property in New Hampshire, that's where you're going to bend over and take it. Alright, the governor celebrates the state eliminating income tax, so here's him weighing in with Maria Bartiromo. We'll grab a little bit of this one.
Taking matters into its own hands to put more money in the pockets of residents. The governor signing an historic bill this week to abolish the state's income tax, becoming the 10th state in the nation to eliminate income tax. Joining me now in a Fox Business exclusive is the governor of Mississippi, Tate Reeves. Governor, great to have you this weekend. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Maria. It's great to see you, and it's a great day to be an American, and it's a great day to be a Mississippian.
Well, this bill has been in the works for 15 years. Tell us what it will mean for the Mississippi economy.
Well, this is, Maria, this is our one big, beautiful bill in Mississippi. We've been working to cut taxes and moving towards eliminating the income tax, and I was finally able to sign a bill into law this week that over time gets us to accomplish exactly that goal. In Mississippi, we believe government ought to take less so that our people get to keep more of their money.
And when you look at other states that have no income tax, you've seen a huge surge of individuals moving from high tax states to low tax states or no income tax states. Is that what you're expecting?
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you see not only economic growth in those states with no income tax, you also see population growth in those states. And we think we have a beautiful state in Mississippi. We've got a beautiful coastline on the Gulf of America. And I will just tell you that we have seen significant economic growth over the last 5 years. We've seen over $30 billion in new capital investment flowing to our state. And we think by eliminating our income tax, we're going to see not only more income and capital flow into our state, we think we're going to see more people flow into our state. And so it's an opportunity for us to be more competitive on the national landscape, and we think it's going to work beautifully.
That is just incredible, and I love that you referred to the Gulf of America. I've talked to President Trump about his own tax.
All right, so that is that. I know that we're having the talk about eliminating the federal income tax. I don't know that that's actually going to happen. I think there are going to be a lot of people that stand in the way of that one. Oh, listen to that. My soul is healed. Collaborative update. I'm sorry, not a collaborative update. A collaborative recording between DJ Cutman and his dad. I'm gonna talk to my boy Decca and see if we can't get Cutman on the pod. I need to do more of the pod again, by the way. I know when we were trying to figure out the scheduling for Contemporary, it took a back seat for a couple weeks, but all right. Moving on to New York. Hochul frees prisoners early to cut costs incurred by strike. So that either tells me that they're okay with releasing people out in the general population who might be violent criminals, or many of these people were probably over-incarcerated. Neither one of those is a good thing. From Jason Beeferman. Kathy Hochul is releasing some prisoners early in an effort to cut costs incurred by a recent corrections officer strike, according to an internal memo. You know, you could just release them early because they learned their lesson, and over-incarceration is a real thing in this country. The move garnered her swift support among left-flank Democrats and admonition from a Republican rival. Commissioner Martuscello has directed that a list of incarcerated individuals who are scheduled to be released in the next few months be reviewed for their transition into residential treatment, said Thomas Maley, a spokesperson for the state's corrections department. Incarcerated individuals are not eligible for the programs if they've been convicted of sex crimes, violent felonies, or more serious felonies like murder, terrorism, or arson. All of which would qualify as violent felonies, I would think. I would hope. Participating individuals must also have an approved residence, which is not a shelter or a DSS placement. A state official with knowledge of the matter said the inmates set to be released early will likely make up less than 2% of the incarcerated population. Again, it's an unnamed source. It could easily be the janitor. Let's see. You don't want us visiting? Why the expensive roads? Well, you can take 94, Quest. That's what I said. Palm says, locals know how to get around, but I do prefer taking 94 somewhere over using US 12. They end up in the same place more or less, but 94 is more direct. See, my thought was at the Toma split, run 90 along US 12 up until the 39 and 90 split from Madison, and then run that as a toll, because that's going to be where most of your out-of-state traffic comes from. And then 94 remains toll-free, and that's more used by locals than 90 is. They're both used, but Arvolt says, Mississippian here, the income tax is being phased out. New usage taxes are being added to compensate. Says 90 and 94 run together. What usage taxes are being added? I think if I remember correctly, grocery and gas taxes. Gas tax makes sense. Sad day on grocery taxes, which they, according to the article we saw, they already have. All right, back to the prison system. We're looking at hundreds, not thousands, of a population of about 32,500, added the person who is granted anonymity to freely discuss a matter still under review. The issue is the Wildcat Strike, which started February 17th when about 11,000 corrections officers walked off the job in what became a 22-day political crisis for Hochul, which is also part of the reason they're not putting her front and center for the presidency, which they were at one point. The officers who went on strike without union approval were protesting mandatory overtime shifts and a state law limiting the use of solitary confinement, the tool that officers say is crucial for ensuring safety within the prisons. Hochul called in 6,500 members of the National Guard to replace the officers whom she contended were acting illegally. Though the strike ended 3 weeks ago, the state is still short 2,000 officers and the National Guard is still in place to fill those vacancies. So, it's an interesting situation, like I said. I would say that they would be over-incarcerated if you can so easily let them back out. From Politico, Musk says Wisconsin would decide the fate of Western civilization. Now he says he expected to lose. I want to put this one in a different position on this one. Let's go with NPC News first. Susan Crawford wins Wisconsin Supreme Court race, defying Elon Musk. Liberals maintain their narrow majority in the court after Crawford's victory in the first battleground state election of Trump's second term. Now, a lot of moving parts with this one. And a lot of people actually got it wrong, too. I was listening to The Sticks on my way home from the school building today. While I was walking, I put that on there, and he alleged that this would flip the Wisconsin Supreme Court. It actually does not. It maintains the Supreme Court composition as it was so far prior to this. That's going to come in more importantly later when I bring up the way that Crawford won and what it means going forward for the people who advocated for Crawford to win, because they're not going to get their way, unfortunately. This is from Adam Edelman. Susan Crawford has won a seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, NPC News projects, allowing liberals to maintain their narrow majority in the battleground state's highest courts, and defying Elon Musk after he spent millions of dollars to oppose her. Crawford, a Dane County Circuit judge who was backed by Democrats, secured a 10-year term on the court over Brad Schimmel, a Waukesha County Circuit judge and former Republican Attorney General. I don't know why they won't. The Wisconsin GOP is just afraid to go run Jennifer Durow, who I think would actually probably win handily. And it would be from the same county on top of it, too. As the first major battleground state election of Trump's second term, the technically nonpartisan contest drew national attention and became the most expensive state Supreme Court race in U.S. history. The outcome is a setback for Trump and his billionaire advisor, Elon Musk. Billionaire advisor! Trump endorsed Schimmel in the final stretch of the race, while Musk injected himself into the center of it, spending huge sums of money, visiting Wisconsin days out from Election Day, and frequently posting about the race on his X feed. In turn, Democrats and progressive groups made Musk their primary villain, which I think was kind of the point of having him out front and center, by the way. Attacking his influence on the race and his efforts to slash federal jobs and the government through the Department of Government Efficiency. As a little girl growing up in Chippewa Falls, I could never have imagined I'd be taking on the richest man in the world for the justice in Wisconsin, Crawford told supporters Tuesday night, and we won. In a brief concession speech, Schimmel said, "I knew I had to put my all in, but you've got to accept the results." Crawford's victory also means liberals will maintain a 4-3 advantage on the court for at least another year, heading into a term when it could decide cases about abortion rights, unions and collective bargaining rights, and congressional maps and redistricting. Now, in this term, there are a few things that are up for grabs at this point. There The Wisconsin Supreme Court, and this, unfortunately, for the people who advocate for abortion rights, is going to become an unfortunate blow for them. They ran this race based on the fact that if Schimmel got in, that he was going to uphold the 1848 Wisconsin law outlawing abortion statewide entirely. Now, the Supreme Court's actually not going to hear a case about this. There are several of them headed for the state Supreme Court, but none of them are going to get taken up because, once again, just like they did when Protasewicz won her seat on the Supreme Court, and just like they did when, what was the one that they knocked off before? They knocked another one off before. But they're going to continue to run on this in statewide races to try to drive people out to the polls and then not do anything about it. If they actually overturn the law based on constitutionality, then they have nothing left to run on. So as long as that law sits in place, they can run it. And I've said, and I know that this pisses off Wisconsin language, sorry. I know that this angers Wisconsin GOP conservatives. But the best thing that they could actually do if they wanted to win a statewide race in this state would be to write a law overturning the 1848 abortion ban. Because it takes the only thing that Democrats have to run on in the state out of the quiver. And I know they're going to come back. They're supposed to hear a case on redistricting in the state. Which, I mean, we know it's only fair to... The only fair districts in the state would be if every single district touches Dane or Milwaukee counties. It's the only way that maps can be fair. But that's what's on the table, and then yes, they're gonna... I know that there's on the schedule a case involving Act 10 that they're gonna come back and review. But Schimmel was also not a great justice. He was not a great nominee for this. Like I said, if there was any intelligence at all in the Wisconsin GOP left, they'd come back and court Jennifer DeRoe, the person who tried the Waukesha Christmas parade murderer. Apart from us, groups on the left made Crawford's support of reproductive rights a central theme in their ads and messaging, just like they did with Protasewicz, by the way. Abortion rights and the fate of the state's 1849 abortion ban were hot topics because of the pair of cases already before the court. They've been there since the beginning of Protasewicz's term, by the way. So, that's what happened in my state. Brad Schimmel jeered by supporters after conceding to Susan Crawford. Well, we're talking about food deserts here. Alright. So people should be able to opt out of paying for the government. I would say that would be based, by the way. Everyone should pay in if they enjoy the privileges. Let's see. Tax items that are directly related to survival. Oh, the straw man out there. I think clothing and household items are for survival too. You can put food in your mouth without clothes on. I've done that actually. But I can't buy food naked, or at least they didn't let me last time. Alright, let's see. From Newsweek. Brad Schimmel, the Republican-backed candidate for Wisconsin State Supreme Court seat, was jeered by his supporters after he told them he conceded the judicial race to his Democrat-backed opponent Susan Crawford. Crawford sailed to victory in the hotly contested election on Tuesday evening, cementing the 4-3 Liberal majority in the state's highest court. The Associated Press projected that Crawford beat Schimmel 55-45, with 99% of the votes counted. It was a significant win for Democrats who viewed the election as a referendum on the Trump admin's agenda, and in particular, Elon Musk. Musk, along with groups associated with him, poured millions of dollars into the race. Trump also threw his support behind Schimmel. We put all your heart into it, and I can't thank you enough for everything you did to try to make this a success, but it just didn't work, Schimmel said during his concession speech on Tuesday, drawing a sympathetic awe from someone in the crowd. Yeah, I've called Judge Crawford and conceded, Schimmel said. His supporters immediately erupted, with several people shouting, "No! Satanists!" someone else was heard saying. "We've got to accept the results," Schimmel said, and his supporters continued shouting and jeering. "Cheaters," one woman in the crowd shouted. "Cheaters!" Another person was heard saying it was only 9:30 p.m. local time, which was about a half hour after the polls in the state closed. "I'm not up here to make any trouble," Schimmel said over continued protests from his supporters. The numbers aren't going to turn around. They're too bad, and we're not going to pull this off. Musk and groups backing him spent more than $20 million in an effort to propel Schimmel to victory in the highest stakes state Supreme Court election. He also traveled to Wisconsin 2 days before the election to give $1 million checks to 2 voters. So, that's where they're at with that. Oddly enough, we did have a situation where a Republican-backed measure to enshrine voter ID in the state Supreme Court did pass. So now it goes before the legislature and the governor's office, I believe. There's another one that a lot of the liberal commentators got wrong, or I'm sorry, the conservative commentators got wrong. Voter ID victory in Wisconsin. Trump says, will allow us to win for many years to come. Now, the voter ID is actually already the law in Wisconsin. What this was meant to do was to get this actually enshrined in the Constitution as a constitutional mandate. This is from Zach Jewell. President Trump said Republicans should have the upper hand in Wisconsin for years to come after the state voted Tuesday to enshrine voter ID requirements in the Constitution. More than 60% of voters approved the constitutional amendment, which will make it more difficult to roll back voter ID requirements. While Wisconsin state laws required voter ID since 2011, Republicans who pushed for the constitutional amendment argued it was necessary to prevent Democrats or the liberal state Supreme Court from undoing the law in the future. Trump took to Truth Social Tuesday to celebrate the approval of voter ID requirements in the swing state by saying it was possibly the biggest win of the night for Republicans, a party that also cruised to victories in 2 special elections in Florida to hold on to U.S. House seats. Voter ID just approved in Wisconsin election. Democrats fought hard against this, presumably so they can cheat. This is a big win for Republicans. Maybe the biggest, the greatest, biggest win of the night, Trump wrote. It should allow us to win Wisconsin like I just did in the presidential election for many years to come. After Biden won the presidency in 2020, Trump and Republicans pushed for voter ID laws across the country, arguing that states that lack such laws make elections susceptible to widespread fraud. Voter ID laws are also extremely popular among Americans. A Gallup poll from October showed 84% of those surveyed approve of photo ID being required at polling places, compared to just 15% who said they opposed. So, that passed. But surprisingly, Crawford won the election. So, 2 opposite partisan issues, both won on the same ballot. I know it's as confusing as a lot of people saying that down ballot Democrats won across the country, while Trump continued to win in several swing states. That is as far as I'm going to go on YouTube. From the Associated Press, Republicans win Florida special election in Trump's strongholds by narrower margins than in 2024. And we'll have a Daily Wire one that goes with this as well. We're at 3 hours already. We got to get done. From Stephanie Matat, Kate Payne, and Adriana Gomez-Licon. Republicans Jimmy Petronis and Randy Fine won special elections Tuesday in 2 Florida congressional districts bolstered by Trump's endorsement to fill vacant seats in reliably Republican strongholds. Petronis, the state's chief financial officer, fended off a challenge from Gay Valamont. Even though she far outraised and outspent him, he will fill the Northwest Florida 1st District, vacated by former Rep. Matt Gaetz, who was chosen to be Trump's AG but withdrew from considerations. In North Florida's 6th District, Fine won against Democrat challenger Josh Wheel for a seat vacated by Mike Waltz when he was tapped to become the National Security Advisor. The win bolsters Republicans' margin to 220 to 213 in the House. And boy, did they try. Even CNN tried to spin this out and say that this wasn't what it was. From the Daily Wire, CNN spins margin in an effort to downplay a Republican win in Florida. From Virginia Cruta, Jake Tapper was quick to spin the margin of victory for Florida's former chief financial officer Jim Petronis, who won the seat vacated by Matt Gaetz on Tuesday. Let's watch.
Petronis is a strong candidate. He's going to win. We're projecting a win for him. But, Dana, it's not a 35-point win that it should be in ruby red Panhandle, Florida.
You're exactly right. And it is the whole question of the margins, Jake. That is what Democrats have been looking at all night.
It's not the margins, though. Like, you had an off-year election. You know things are bad for Democrats when they're celebrating double-digit losses in congressional races that they, by the way, poured millions of dollars into. They poured a ridiculous amount of money into that. But with this being done, one of the other things that I want to bring up, and it looks like I'm going to have to cut our Instagram feed because we're at 15% battery on the phone. So if you're still watching this on Instagram, hit that link in the description to see the end of the program. Thank you and take care. And let's get that plugged back in. One of the things that came up, and we'll read this one from WFIN, was the fact that Elise Stefanik's nomination as UN ambassador was withdrawn at this point, which I think actually was probably the right thing to do given the situation, based on the fact that Stefanik's seat was not overtly safe, and you don't really have a lot of seats to lose at this point. WFIN blindsided how Stefanik's Trump nomination as UN ambassador imploded. Elise Stefanik saw her nomination to serve as ambassador to the UN under Trump crumble last week before she ultimately withdrew her name from consideration. The saga unfolded quickly, with Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Jim Risch only being informed of Stefanik's withdrawal by the White House roughly 2 hours before Trump shared it on social media. Trump's pulling Stefanik's nomination for ambassador to the UN blindsided seemingly everybody on Capitol Hill. One senior House GOP aide said on Thursday, as early as yesterday, representatives were praising her as the soon-to-be ambassador. Trump himself was reportedly concerned with about the slim House majority for Democrats, overperforming in special elections in Florida. Stefanik, who'd been poised for bipartisan confirmation process, said she'd spoken with Trump multiple times since Thursday. And it really came down to the fact that, this is a more contested seat, and people on the liberal left side of things have been pushing for Stefanik to be ousted and her seat. They've been pushing for that for some time. She's one of the dangerous ones where they think that she could go back and run for president. So I think that it's actually pretty normal for the fact that to be brought in. All right, we have reached the conclusion of the news portion of this program. 3 hours and 38 seconds in. let's do some things that I like and some things that I hate. But first, we do the rules of acquisition. The rules of acquisition are the basis of the Ferengi religion, based on how they interact culturally and fiscally with other species around the galaxy and within themselves. This was, at the beginning, a very, very, very open assault against capitalism. Roddenberry himself being an avowed communist, so yes, it doesn't surprise anybody that he would write rules of acquisition into his storylines that would mock capitalism, but they turned out unintentionally based, I think. So every week we look at one of these rules of acquisition. We look at whether or not it is a mockery or it can actually be used in general parlance. And if it can, we talk about how it can be. If it's used in alpha canon, I can even talk about how it was used in the program. If it's beta canon, I've not read enough Star Trek books to be able to do that. So, our 92nd rule of acquisition. We did the 91st on Thursday. From a DS9 novel, highest score, so one that I have not read, therefore I cannot talk about how it's used in the canon. But the 92nd rule of acquisition is there are many paths to profit. Now, with that being said, there are indeed many paths to profit. You can go back and work for the man. You can start your own business. You can start your own product. You could scream into a microphone for 3 hours on a Thursday morning on YouTube. There are many paths to profit. And not everything is going to work for everybody. We'll talk about this later in things that I hate as well. In fact, the exact next slide. But not everybody's the same. Not everybody makes profit the same. So, yes, there are indeed many, many paths to profit. And that's all that I have to say about that one. Find your own path. Alright, let's start with some things that I hate. Now, the image here, without the caption from friend of the show, Jessica Green, I put it into my Discord, and we had a very, very, very lengthy conversation about this one, with I think maybe some hurt feelings that get there as well. I think that there were some hurt feelings on both sides of this one, as tensions wrote hot on this one. But I put this on things that I hate because, well, there are a few reasons. Let me read the caption on this one first. Jessica Green says, dude really let podcast bros ruin his whole life. The post says, it's a Reddit post that says, am I the asshole? Excuse my language for this one, but that's the quote. AITA for not stopping my husband from getting a paternity test. My husband recently asked me for a paternity test. Why? Because our son looks nothing like him. I never cheated on him. I would never. He knows he was my first and only partner. I told him he can have the test. Who am I to stop him from it? He took the test and found out our son is actually his, and he seemed very happy. I told him, congrats. Now you're sure it's your own son you're paying child support for? He asked, what does that mean? And I told him. If he thinks that I cheat on him, then we truly shouldn't be married. I took my son and left, and we're currently staying in a hotel, and I'm going to get divorced. He keeps calling and texting and begging me to come back, but I don't want to. He said if I had such a problem with the test, then I should have stopped him instead of allowing it and acting like a bratty child and ruining our lives. I'm not sure I'm the one ruining our lives. He is the one who thinks I'm a cheater. He should be happy he doesn't have to live with a cheater anymore. Now, I have a lot of things to say about this one. This one was a hard one. But when we go into the next slide, that's when I'm going to explain what the caption was. Now, I don't think either person was in the right on this one. I think that they are both in the wrong. The gentleman, unless there was any sort of suspicion, probably didn't need to have this test done. But he was told by Andrew Tate, I'm guessing, that every man should always have this out there. Because that's what he did. And passive guys who listen to what people like Andrew Tate say shouldn't be out there having children. I'm going to come back out plain and simple. I don't necessarily think that this is something that's worth ending a marriage over either. I think that there are steps that should be done before we get to the point of, in a hotel, going to go and get divorced. And how I know that this guy is a little beta that's just doing what other people tell him to do at this point, it has to do with this last part here. He said if I had such a problem with the test, then the woman in question should have stopped him instead of allowing it. Well, that's not what your God Andrew Tate told you to do. You're supposed to be the man in the family and make the demands off of things. So if you're going to walk the walk, you're going to earn the consequences, number one. And number two, you have to walk the walk and do what you're supposed to be. If you want this that bad, then you have to sit back and own it. And you should own the fact that there's at least some pressure there. Once again, the fact that she just straight out the door went to the hotel and says, I'm going straight to a divorce, tells me that there's not going to be any sort of effort whatsoever to do so. And there are people that are suggesting that she had already was looking to leave. Now, I've seen what some of these Tate bros act like, and I could see why there would be already some inklings of wanting to go back and leave. Because, they're really, really cringy. But regardless, no, nobody's in the right for this one. And furthermore, and this is the hardest part for this one, because, yes, I know that there are some Tate bros on the Discord that were discussing this out as well. But the hardest part for this was brought up in the midst of this is that we're only hearing this from the woman's side who's jaded, who's already looking to go back out and get the divorce. There might have been inklings or suspicions at this that we don't know about. Because she's going to write this up as she's going to be the most innocent one in this. We haven't heard his side. We don't know anything. We don't know anything about this situation whatsoever, except for what was presented to us in front of it. We could come back out and find out that he was entirely justified in this. We could come back out and find out that he was hitting her on top of this before. There are a million other possibilities other than what was presented in these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs that this could have been, and either one of them could have been justified for this one. But the same people who are coming out and because they're being told to do this because Andrew Tate told them to do on some podcast somewhere are the same people that are doing this. And I wasn't going to put this one on here, but that's the reason this one's on here. Also on Am I the Asshole on Reddit. AITAH, if I divorce my husband for not wiping his butt. This is the same mentality that's pushing these guys to go back and say, even if I have no suspicion of cheating, I need to go and get a paternity test because my kid happens to not look anything like me. This is the same kind of mentality that goes into this. Yes, this is pretty much the title. My husband recently started saying he's not going to wipe his butt anymore. After he's in the restroom, he got into his head that alpha males do not wipe, therefore he is no longer doing it. He has been, for the past 2 days, been walking around everywhere we go telling guys alphas don't wipe. He's very serious about not wiping, and he's not listening to reasoning. I don't know what to do, and I fear that this might be the start of the end of our marriage. How do I convince him to wipe? I mean, it should be pretty easy because it's such a big part of society at this point. Even little Julian in Big Daddy knew what was up.
That song anymore.
I know, pal. That's not it.
But I want my own ass. I want my own ass.
I know.
That song anymore.
I know, pal. That's not it.
But I want my own ass. I want my own ass.
I know.
I kind of want to know which one of the Sprouse twins was the one that got to scream that on screen. I wipe my own ass. That was one of the Zach and Cody twins, by the way, because that's Sue was credited for that, was the Zach and Cody twins. Yeah, this is the same mentality that leads men to go back and do stupid crap, like what the last slide was. All right, another thing is that I hate. Speaking of tolls in Wisconsin, there's been a new set of scams going around trying to portray that you owe tolls in my state. iMessage coming in, Wisconsin DMV, final reminder, you have an outstanding toll. Your toll account balance is outstanding. If you fail to pay by March 31st, 2025, you'll be penalized or subject to legal action. Pay now with a seemingly legit website, even though you can see the etscmb.xin/us is not correct. Immediate action is necessary to avoid penalties and enforcement actions due to delayed payment. Thank you for cooperation. Reminder that there are no tolls in Wisconsin. So it would be impossible for you to owe tolls to Wisconsin. Other things that I hate. Wisconsin right now, pointing out that these people are completely unhinged. Minocqua Brewing Company, which we've talked about here before. By the way, we've heard a group in Madison is going to attempt to make a citizen's arrest of Elon Musk for committing a felony for trying to bribe Wisconsinites to vote. Our judicial system refuses to stand up to Musk after our AG was dinged twice by a judge in Columbia County and then by the appeals court located in Dane County. When are judges going to learn that it's okay to appear partisan if the other side is breaking the law? Apparently not soon enough to keep our democracy safe. We've been asked to see if we can find a pair of handcuffs using our large platform. You can find them in any adult bookstore, by the way. They have fuzz and leopard print on them. If anyone in Madison has handcuffs, please private message us. You probably don't want to use those handcuffs. I'm just saying. But this is, of course, is from the Minocqua Brewing Company, known for their lovely progressive beers. AOC IPA, Evers Ale, Bernie Brew, Tammy Shandy, Choice Wine, this kind of thing. But they're about us. Kurt Bangstad and his late wife Elizabeth Smith purchased the business in early 2016 from the Dane and Lori White family, who ran the business for just over 10 years. The historic 1929 Freemasons building was renovated to a school, library, then a church before transforming to a restaurant and brewery in the early 2000s. After the coronavirus shut down all restaurants in March 2020 and the Trump admin failed to have the national plan to slow down contagion, and the restaurant industry suffered unnecessarily by having to limit capacity longer than necessary, Bangstad aired his frustrations by hanging a huge Joe Biden for President sign on his wall after having to lay off his entire restaurant staff. By the way, he has been doing the progressive beer thing since long before that. This stance alienated many conservatives in the area, but also endeared him to progressives around the country, leading him to decide to sell progressive beer. No, he's been doing this before that. His first two efforts, Biden Beer, Inoffensive and Not Bitter, and Inauguration Day Beer, a peaceful transition of flavor, sold out before they were even made. So, yeah, this guy is basically just running his mouth for pride. F's in the chat for suicide. We don't know why, but Texas Sheriff's Office warns 4 deputies lost to suicide in 6 weeks. From Alex Altman Devilbus. A sheriff's office in Texas is mourning the loss of 4 current and former deputies who died by suicide in just 6 weeks, according to officials. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez announced on March 19th that a Harris County Sheriff's Office retiree, later identified as William Bozeman, had died from an apparent suicide, marking 3 for us within the span of a week. Our hearts are heavy. We extend our deepest condolences to their family, colleagues, and friends, Gonzalez wrote on Facebook. It's a painful reminder that life is fragile and time is not promised. On March 20th, Deputy Christina Kohler's death was ruled a suicide by a county medical examiner after she was found on March 13th, according to KTRK. The sheriff's office said Kohler was working in the courts division at their time of death and had joined the department in 2018. Now, they're not giving any reason, any indicators, or if there was a note or anything off of this. I, right now, have no expectation to suspect any sort of foul play on this, but what I will remind you is if you are feeling that depressed, do reach out to somebody. Call the suicide helpline. Let's try to end this epidemic as quickly as we can, because it's a tragedy for everybody. I know a lot of the Trump thumpers love this one. I think it's stupid. Beyond stupid at this one. NPR. Presidents can be elected twice. Trump could try to end runs around that, experts say. I mean, he's not going to get anywhere. I can tell you that, because the Constitution is very clear. And I know Trump thumpers say, he's just trolling them. He wants to get their goats, and that might be it. But realistically, a lot of them believe him. A lot of his people believe him that he can go back, and because it's not consecutive, then he can go back and run again. Or he could go run for vice president, which he cannot do either. The Constitution explicitly states that no person shall hold the office of president more than twice in his single lifetime. It also states very clearly that anybody who's elected to the office of vice president has to be eligible to hold the office of presidency, which Donald Trump is not eligible to do at this point. I know that they cited various states like Virginia who don't allow you consecutive terms for governor. You can have unlimited terms, they just can't be consecutive for governor in Virginia, whereas a lot of times a popular governor and incumbent will run for a lieutenant governor, and then in the next term go back and run for governor again. But no, this cannot be done. We don't need to go back and start teasing the idea of bypassing the Constitution for stuff. That's not something we need to do right now. So there are no plausible strategies for attempting end runs. There's no way to do this. It would be injuncted almost immediately. No, Trump cannot run for a third term. Yes, even if they're not consecutive. And if he were to try to do that, they would go back and try to run Obama again. God help us. God help us all. Reporter asked Trump about running for a third term. Let's watch the video that goes with this.
If you were allowed, for some reason, to run for a third term,
of course it's Peter.
Is there a
Casey.
thought that the Democrats could try to run Barack Obama against you?
I'd love that.
For his third term?
Boy, I'd love that. That would be a good one. I'd like that. No, people are asking me to run, and there's a whole story about running for a third term. I don't know. I never looked into it. They do say there's a way you can do it, but I don't know about that. But I have not looked into it. I want to do a fantastic job. We have 4 years, just about, almost close to 4 years. Time is flying, but it's still close to 4 years, and we're getting a lot of credit for having done a great job in the first almost 100 days.
We're getting a lot of credit for doing almost a great job in the first almost 100 days. No, he can't run. A lot of people would like me to. Another example of people putting race into it where race doesn't need to be. Star Wars actor comes after fans, calls the franchise the most whitest elite space. Lando Calrissian has entered the chat. From Amanda Harding. John Boyega claims that Star Wars fans are prejudiced against black actors and will only tolerate them being cast in minor roles. Billy D. Williams has entered the chat. The 33-year-old British actor achieved global fame for his role as Finn in Star Wars The Force Awakens in 2015. Up the top again. Boyega made the remarks during the new Apple TV Plus documentary, #1 on the call sheet, Black Leading Men in Hollywood. Star Wars always had the vibe of being the most whitest elite space, the actor said per Entertainment Weekly. It's a franchise that's so white that a black person existing in it was something. funny. I don't remember that being the complaint from most people. I remember the complaint from most people being the fact that the writing absolutely sucked and it completely retconned the entire franchise. By making Daisy Ridley into a Mary Sue. Boyega said Star Wars movies did have black stars, such as himself, in them, but complained the roles were secondary and both the fans and the franchise heads were too quick to celebrate the inclusion. How was Lando Calrissian a secondary role? It literally advanced the plot of Empire Strikes Back. Or, Mace Windu. How are these secondary characters? And here I got called out for that too. You can always tell it's something when some Star Wars fans try to say, we had Lando Calrissian and we had Samuel L. Jackson, he said. It's like telling me how many cookie chips are in the cookie dough. It's like, they're just scattered in there, bro. But they were central, primary characters. Honestly, if you hate the fandom of a movie, you shouldn't star in the movie. And while I didn't care for the writing of the sequel trilogy, I did actually like the Finn character. Alright, a couple more things that I hate, and then we'll do things that I like, and then we'll be out of here for the day. We're going for 3.5 hours. I think this one might be a record. Regular MSDNC guest, all laws passed before 65 should be presumptively unconstitutional. From Virginia Kruta. Regular MSDNC guest and justice correspondent for the Nation, Ellie Mistel, claimed Tuesday that virtually all laws passed prior to 65 should be considered presumptively unconstitutional. Do you really want to go back and bring that argument up, given the fact that, I don't know, the 19th Amendment, the 17th Amendment, all precede the 14th Amendment, all precede 1965. Argued that any law passed prior to the 65 Voting Rights Act should be thrown out because the law passed. Until the law passed, we were an apartheid country. Wow. I think this guy should go actually live in an apartheid country and see what it's actually like.
One of the laws you write about is playing out right now, the Immigration and Nationality Act. Now, this administration is using this statute to justify the detentions and possible deportations, actually, of visa and green card holders who they seem to deem a threat to U.S. foreign policy. What do you make of the administration's use of the act? And more broadly, is Trump really setting up a First Amendment showdown, which is what Whoopi's been talking about?
Yes, absolutely. One of my premises for the book is that every law passed before the 1965 Voting Rights Act should be presumptively unconstitutional, right? But because before the 1965 Voting Rights Act, we were functionally an apartheid country. Not everybody who lived here could vote here. So why should I give about some law that some old white man passed in the 1920s?
I don't know, because some old white man in the 50s started the ball rolling on the 1965 Voting Rights Act. In entertainment, and I think my next few are going to just be all entertainment related. Chappelle Roan, who I barely know who that is, called out for saying her friends with children are in hell. Pop singer Chappelle Roan is getting all kinds of backlash following an interview she did on the popular Call Her Spank My Ass Daddy podcast with Alex Cooper. The 27-year-old singer, who quickly rose to fame and is popular for her unique drag queen aesthetic and prickly personality, I know nothing about either one of those two things, by the way, is facing criticism for comments she made about parenting and politics in particular. First, the Grammy-winning artist, whose real name is Kaylee Amstutz, talked about going back to her hometown after getting famous and seeing everyone married with regular jobs and children. I don't know when that's going to happen for me, the singer said. Like, I don't know when that's realistic. Do you want that? Cooper asked. Like, get married? Yeah, I don't know. Part of me is like, is it ever going to be legal to marry? Like, my wife one day, you know, I don't know. But kids, it is legal, by the way, just so you know. All my friends who have kids are in hell, Abstutes continued. I don't know anyone. I actually don't know anyone who's, like, happy and has children at this age, she went on, rattling off ages of children 5 and under as examples. I've literally not met anyone who's happy, anyone who has the light in their eyes, anyone who has slept. And this goes back onto the generalization comment, honestly. Because for some people, it is a blessing to have kids at 18, 24, 21, 27. Some people consider it to be a blessing at 17. There are fewer of those, I will admit. But some people do consider it to be a blessing. It's not a generality. It's not an all-encompassing thing. If it's not for you, it's not for you. I'm not going to come back and tell you that you have to go back at 27 and have kids to be happy. But it's really not your place to come back and say that everybody not having kids is also the way to do it. It's the only way to be happy. So, and yes, you can marry your wife right now, anywhere in this country. And the last one of the things that I hate is not really, I'm not going to read the article. I'm just going to read the headline and say, no crap, Sherlock. Handmaid's Tale producer calls series a symbol of resistance against Trump. We know. Like, we knew this the moment when you dropped it on his first year of being elected. That's what that was. You've been open about it. You don't have to come back out and tell us 9 years later. Alright, let's do some things that I like. So, on the topic of entertainment for myself, going back in the other way, typically I try to put in a movie that I've seen, even though I've only ever seen 5 movies, TV show I'm watching, or song that I like. So, and I don't think I ever touched on this one when I started, but I know that Pom and I have been getting into Big Bang, and part of that came from, I wanted to, because I'd watched, I think, up to like season 7 of Big Bang before I stopped having cable, and I just stopped paying attention that much, and now I do want to see the end of it. But we've also been on Netflix watching The Young Sheldon, the prequel series off of that, and I very much enjoy it. It's not as slapstick out comedy like most of your Chuck Lorre productions are, so they've taken some of that out. They've actually made it into a comedy drama series more often, and they got rid of the insufferable laugh track too, so you don't feel compelled to laugh even when the joke is in fact funny. Now, I am into season 6. I believe that there were only 7 seasons of this program that were out. I know that they have concluded it at this point. Take a breath. Stop speaking for a second. But one of the things that I do like a little bit more about this is, one of the reasons I started pulling away from Big Bang when it was going on was the last few seasons started to be, hey, let's figure out which celebrity we can get on here for a cameo, as a lot of long-running programs tend to do towards their last few seasons when they get popular. Is, okay, here's how we rate the script now to get this celebrity for a cameo, here's how we get this celebrity for a cameo, here's how we get this celebrity for a cameo. And I've called that out on different programs before. This one doesn't seem to be suffering from that. I mean, all the big cameos are regular recurring characters. The guy that plays the Grand Nagus from Deep Space Nine, Janine from Ghostbusters, they're all regular characters. Reba McEntire is a regular character in the show, and they all continue to come back over and over again. Instead of just, hey, here's how we rewrote this to have this one 5-minute walk-on from this person who's really, really famous right now. So we'll watch the trailer for Young Sheldon together.
If If you thought living with Sheldon Cooper was tough,
Physicist, baker, lover, what can't I do?
try growing up with him.
You excited to start school? How can I be excited when he's going to be in the same grade as me?
I'm not planning on being in the 9th grade for very long. He's not in the same grade as me anymore, and I'm thrilled. Good luck with your finger painting.
From the brains behind The Big Bang Theory.
Admit it, he's adopted.
How can I be adopted when I have a twin sister? Think, monkey. Think.
Young Sheldon, coming to CBS this fall. If you thought working with Sheldon Cooper was tough,
I'm Dr. Sheldon Cooper, BS, MS, MA, PhD, and SCD. OMG, right?
try being his high school music teacher.
You have perfect pitch. You should really pursue music.
No, thank you. Musicians take drugs. Is there a faculty restroom I could use?
From the brains behind The Big Bang Theory, Young Sheldon, coming to CBS this fall. This fall, Sheldon Cooper's going to high school.
I've always loved trains. Of course, nobody I knew cared about Newtonian physics. The only Newtons they cared about were Wayne and Fig.
Kelly, dinner's ready.
What are you doing out
I was exploring dimensional kinematics.
Admit it, he's adopted.
How can I be adopted when I have a twin sister? Think, monkey. Think.
That's enough. No one's adopted.
I wish I was.
That can still be arranged. You understand that some people are going to be intimidated by you.
Or maybe they'll recognize my intellect and make me their leader.
Lord, look after my son. Don't let him get stuffed in a gym bag. 5 minutes into my math class, he questioned my credentials. Oral Roberts University is a wonderful school.
Hey, Mom, look, that girl's pregnant.
Congratulations.
You're not going to make it in this school if you keep ratting people out.
I saw one boy with a t-shirt that said, "Bite me."
Yeah, that's terrible.
Young Sheldon, CBS this fall after The Big Bang Theory.
The casting was great in that. The family casting was really good. Interestingly enough, the woman who played Sheldon's mother in The Big Bang, her daughter plays Sheldon's mom in Young Sheldon, so that was a good casting choice. And yes, Ian Armitage does great homage to the character as well. So if you haven't seen that one before, have a look at it. It's great. All right, some other things that I like here. Speaking of entertainment news, Candace Cameron Bure celebrates former Full House co-star being cancer-free. That's right, that's David Coulier, who was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma last year, is now cancer-free. So I think that's 100% worth celebrating. I know that there have been partisan issues going through the cast of Full House recently, given the more conservative viewpoint of Candace Cameron, which should surprise nobody given who her brother is, and the more progressive viewpoint of Jodie Sweetin, Stephanie Tanner. And I know there have been some bitter feuds on social media based on those things, but to see the people come together and still celebrate. I mean, these girls grew up with Dave Coulier and like a father to them, and they still celebrate the important milestones like this together. And yeah, being cancer-free is something to 100% still celebrate, especially if you're starting from stage 3. So I'm happy for him. I'm happy that they can come together to come back and celebrate. Other things that I like. Morgan Wallen walks off SNL stage, returns to God's Country. Now, I'm not typically one for big stage shows of partisanship in and of themselves, but one of the things that I will say to this one is you shouldn't be expected to stay somewhere if you don't feel where it's comforting to you. Now, having to go back and make a public statement about that, I don't agree with, and in fact, making a public statement about it. If you don't like what you're going through on the stages with this, then don't do it. Let's read here from Fox News. Tracy Wright reporting, Morgan Wallen left Saturday Night Live for God's Country. The country singer returned to the late night sketch comedy show as the musical act for the first time in 5 years to promote his upcoming album, I'm the Problem. After host Mikey Madison thanked the last night singer for appearing on the show, Wallen walked directly off the stage as the camera panned out to the cast congratulating each other for another completed episode. So it wasn't in the middle of a performance either. It was at the end. He fulfilled his contractual obligation for 2 songs, Shortly after leaving Manhattan's 30 Rockefeller Plaza, Wallen wrote that he was excited to return home. Get Me to God's Country, the Sand in My Boots singer, told his millions of fans on Instagram stories. Sources told Fox News Digital that nothing was wrong at SNL, and Wallen's walk-off appeared to be an oops moment. It might have been, it might not have been. That was just the way he entered and exited the studio all week during rehearsal and camera blocking, so he just walked that way after hugging Mikey, the insider revealed. Wallen performed 2 songs from his upcoming album, including Just in Case and I'm the Problem. His return to SNL was years in the making following a controversial debut. Roughly 7 months into the pandemic, Wallen was asked to be the musical guest on an October episode of SNL. Days before he was scheduled to perform, footage went viral across social media showing the singer not wearing a mask at an Alabama football game and celebrating with various women at a bar afterwards. People who supported masks and social distancing during the pandemic were outraged. He was immediately removed from the scheduled SNL appearance. Wallen apologized in a video shared online. I'm in a New York City hotel room and I was getting ready for SNL this Saturday, and I got a call from the show letting me know that I will no longer be able to play. That's because of COVID protocols, which I understand. So, it was rocky. He did what he needed to do, and he is back. I know this is probably going to be a bit controversial to some people, but I never thought, even with Linda McMahon being in, that press conferences would become WWE events, but that's kind of what happened. Linda McMahon crashes Dem press conference outside of Education Department. From Virginia Kruta. Now, my only question with this, of course, is when she did this, did the entrance music play and the lights get really dim? Several House Democrats met with Education Secretary Linda McMahon on Wednesday, and following the meeting with a press conference outside the Education Department, a press conference they clearly did not expect McMahon to crash. Burgess Owens of Utah shared video from the press conference that showed Frederica Wilson of Florida mocking the parental rights advocacy group Moms for Liberty and suggesting that they'd be unequipped to set education policy or create curricula without the oversight of the federal government. Watch House Democrats use an open discussion on education reform with Education Secretary McMahon to smear parents who want more involvement in their child's education and spread lies about the erasing of Black history that's 100% not happening. Owens posted along with a clip, "What a disgusting political stunt." And then the next clip, of course, is Democrats at a press conference outside the Department of Education, so Education Secretary McMahon came on to join them. I can see the squared circle in the middle of the room, crowds cheering, and then just Linda McMahon's entrance music popping up on the big screen outside of this. I don't care that politics has become a joke. It deserved to be.
So why do we need a Department of Education? Let these moms of liberty write our curriculum. Let these moms of liberty tell us how to educate our children. Let these moms of liberty tell us that you should not teach Black history, that you should wipe the pages clean. Remember now, this is a conversation that's been going on for about 12 years.
All right. And now the crash.
Longer corporate model without a plan and without an effort to really protect our students. So we want to be clear about that. I want to say one other thing, the mood in the room, it was very collegial. We are extraordinarily grateful to the secretary that she joined us. Thank you. She's here. Perhaps I should give her the podium. We're extraordinarily grateful that the secretary gave us the space to have these conversations. But with all due respect, madam, I think my biggest concern is that the states will not be able to protect the programs and services that you would like to devolve with them.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. And I just want to express my gratitude to all of these folks who came today so that we could have an open discussion about what I believe is one of the most important things that we can have a discussion on or action on in our country, and that is the education of our young people. As Representative Tanaka said as we were ending the meeting, which I thought was incredibly appropriate, and that is that this is not a partisan issue. This is about the children of America, and it's the next generation, the generation after that. And if we want to have our leaders, if we want to have that next group of engineers and doctors and lawyers and plumbers and electricians and HVAC operators, then we need to focus on how they can best have their education. And I believe, and I know the President does believe this as well, the best education is that is closest to the child, where teachers and parents, local superintendents working together, and local school boards to develop the curriculum for those students is the best way that it can happen.
And I do, especially as far as curricula go, I do understand and accept the fact that yes, that should be a bit more tailored to your locality, especially. And there is room for having federal funding and shift everything. I don't think that we need to have an overarching department for that when there are other places that can do this. And I also think it's great that McMahon was able to come back in and address the press conference that was put out there basically to make fun of her. All right. A couple more things. Maybe not. Surprising voice. One that, again, that I've spent more time agreeing with than I ever thought that I would. Bill Maher reveals why he accepted Trump invite for private dinner. Bill Maher said this week that he's accepted an invitation, we knew about that, from Trump to have a private dinner at the White House that he believes could help heal political divisions in the country. Maybe this is a beginning to heal America, Maher said. Now, I don't have some sort of complex where I think I can heal America. I can't. Okay, let's get that clear. I'm not going to be healing America, but if two guys who've been at each other for so long, it's kind of like a Nixon to China thing. I have their credentials. There was nobody who was going to be harder on Trump or more prescient about the fact that he wasn't going to leave office voluntarily than I was. I feel like I have the credentials. But they also respect me because I'm honest about the woke train to crazy town, and I don't shrink from that. I've also lost a lot of fans for that. The woke people have left the building, but I'm willing to make that sacrifice, but it does give you certain credibility. I think it actually would be good for Maher to go back in and have the interview, and I think it's good for a bipartisan talk to happen for these people to reach across the aisle. However, as far as the healing of America goes, unfortunately for Maher, it's more likely going to be that he is going to have a banner or a billboard with his face on it somewhere with a swastika painted over it than to heal America. Sorry, Bill, but that's the more likely outcome. And lastly, Kid Rock reveals details of Trump's conversation with Maher. We're going to get some of this, I think, revealed openly. I think we're going to be able to hear the conversation eventually, but for right now, it's behind closed doors and it's all private. But let's read this one here from Nick Morderwanek. A healthy amount of common ground was reached during a dinner discussion between Trump and longtime critic Bill Maher and entertainer Kid Rock for reasons unknown. By the way, just as a little side note on Bob Ritchie over there is, you're 58 years old. It might be time to drop the kid moniker. The trio apparently dined together on Monday, just days after both Trump and Maher publicly discussed the possibility that they would meet face-to-face following years of conflict. Newsweek has reached out to the White House via email for commenting. Is that Kid Rock, or is that Dr. Phil with a more flamboyant wardrobe? I can't tell. Maher, host of HBO's Real Time, has been critical of Trump for over a decade and made him the butt of many jokes. So have I. One of them involved the longtime TV and Club Random podcast host offering a $5 million donation to a charity of Trump's choice, with the suggestion being Hair Club for Men if you produced a birth certificate, proving that he was not half ape. A joke made following Trump's repeated statements about former President Barack Obama not being a U.S. citizen. Trump filed a $5 million lawsuit against Maher in response, which was dismissed without prejudice 8 weeks later in April 2013. On Tuesday, Rock told Fox Business host Stuart Varney of Varney & Co. that the dinner went surprisingly well. Ultimate Fighting Championship CEO Dana White was also reportedly in attendance, according to the musician. "It went so well," Rock told Varney. "We talked about a lot of things that we had in common, which Bill Maher is a big supporter of Trump's stance on the border, of ending wokeism. The president even asked him about a policy like what he thought about Iran getting nuclear weapons and how Israel should react. Bill's a big supporter of Israel." Yeah, Bill Maher's billboard is getting a swastika painted on it. "We broke bread and talked about things that we had in common, and it could not have been more cordial. Very nice. I think everyone was pleasantly surprised." Ritchie added that White told him he did the right thing by getting Trump and Maher together, even though Trump previously said he did it as a favor for Ritchie, and even supposedly called him the head of the dinner to ask, "What the hell do you got me doing here?" So, that has happened, and it is afternoon at this point. 4 hours. We're at 4 hours almost. This is a record. I need a breath. I need food. Give me some food. Anyway, let's throw the outro music up and let's head out of here for the day. Alright, with that, it is finished. 70 tabs. More than that, because we had more than 10 over on the Things I Hate side. 80 tabs of news. But we're done. It's over. Thanks so much for everybody who came by and hung out. We kept full viewership, I think, for most of the day, looks like. So, we're out of here. Take care. Have a wonderful time. Usually I sit around and wait for the lull in the outro music, but, I mean, it's 12:20. I haven't eaten anything yet today, so I'm going to go do that. Stick around if you're on Twitch. We're going to go find somebody on the rating side. Take care. Have a wonderful day. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary now Thursday mornings. Unless an appointment comes up, then we will move to Wednesday. But now Thursday mornings over here. Have a great weekend. We will see you here next week, and take care. Bye. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.